Okay, so I'm just recording this portion of the podcast first, but I'll figure out where to put it in the podcast order. I might tuck it towards the back for obvious reasons, but I've just got a few mates here shooting the shit on a Saturday morning for me, a Friday night for everyone else. And it's about, half an hour before I usually record, and we're all just sitting around sort of playing retail. And you guys have probably heard me on the podcast over the last episode or two saying I'm trying retail, I'm giving it a go, I'm really trying to be open-minded, and this is not my game, but I'll give this new expansion a go. People seem positive on it. I'll see what it's all about. Just last episode, I believe, or maybe 2 episodes ago, you heard me saying, I don't know why I'm playing this game. It's so stressful. The pace is too sped up. Like, I feel like a fish out of water. I don't know. Like, I constantly question myself, why am I doing this? I play games to relax, to have fun, not to be pushed to the brink and stressed when I video game. I plowed through all of that and really tried to sort of, put it on myself to try to acclimatize, to give The War Within a fair shake and not do what I've done with previous expansions, which is basically just give up as soon as I crack the shits. And I really have battled through much of that. And while I wouldn't say I've totally acclimatized, I sort of get it more now. And the reason we're recording this sort of semi-casual, semi-professional bit of a classic podcast about retail World of Warcraft is because I'm enjoying the living shit out of it. People keep asking me on Twitter, on Discord, DMs and all that stuff, hey Josh, like, what do you think of retail? Are you enjoying it? And people I'm genuinely touched. I've sort of not had this kind of reach out before from people going like, hey man, I kind of want to know what you think of this game. And I'm not used to that. I don't like calling myself an influencer or presuming that anything I do has any fucking, sense of import or sway or anything in the world. And it shouldn't, and it doesn't. I'm literally just some fucking dude, some Australian sitting behind a microphone in fucking Brisbane, Australia. It's not a big deal, but people I'm friendly with and people who have listened to my show for years are asking, and my answer has been, look, I don't know what else to tell you other than I'm not a retail fan, but I cannot stop playing this game. Now, I always throw in the caveat of, look, I don't know how long this will last. I felt positive about Dragonflight and stopped playing like 10 days later, but this really does feel different. And I've said on the show that I'm trying to temper all hype. I'm not going to get sucked up in the honeymoon period. I shouldn't have even bought the game. I said to you guys, I'm going to wait a month for all the reviews to come in. Then I'll decide whether or not I want to play it. Basically, I lasted about 48 hours, and 2 days after the what we call the pleb launch, after early access ended, I dove in. Ubiquitous was kind of like, man, you got to try this. And a few other people were like, come on, give it a go. And I was like, oh, fine. I guess it's only $75. I could have hit Blizzard up. I do have a very, very lovely PR rep, like sort of someone who sort of handles me from Blizzard in the Oceanic region. Shout out to Bill. You're the best. I'm sure I could have reached out to Bill and been like, hey, Bill, any chance of a fucking cheeky free code for The War Within? But I didn't do that because I thought, look, I want to be able to sort of say whatever I say about this expansion without any fear or obligation of, pissing people off because they gave me a freebie. So I just shelled out the $75. Not a big deal, whatever. Not that, $75 isn't a small amount of money to some people. I get that. It's still money. It's a game. It's, hey man, that could have been a nice meal with the wife. You know what I mean? But I bought a game, and at this point, I have no regrets. I haven't enjoyed a game this much in many, many years. It's an odd feeling for retail WoW and me right now, but I don't want to hype it up too much. I'll save that maybe for. I've said to the boys, if I'm still playing this thing in a month, then I'll do the gushing podcast, right? But I still want to talk about it because this podcast has always been about me talking about the version of the game that I'm playing and enjoying the most. If I just did the most popular thing, we wouldn't have covered SOD for the last 6 months. You know what I mean? I've been loving the shit out of SOD, and that's why the podcast has covered it. Now I'm in a tough position where I'm like, I run this very, popular classic podcasts, and now all of a sudden, as Blizzard intended, they've pulled me away from classic to play retail. And we'll talk about sort of the grander machinations behind all of this and the way that Blizzard has masterfully crafted their own ecosystem now. But I just want to, I want to talk about it, guys. I'm kind of not going to be overly apologetic, but I just want to talk about this game. Now, I might, like I said, shift this conversation towards the tail end of the pod so we get our bread and butter, the classic stuff done first. But I'm busting to talk about retail. I've never been more excited for this game since... I'll throw my guests into the mix because I'm just monologuing here and they want to say something too. But I'm joined by a couple of regulars. You guys know Ubiquitous. You guys know Marcus. We're also joined by former Countdown guest, I believe, Parallax. You've been on the show before, Parallax, right?
Yeah, just a couple of times.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And newcomer Frugo. Mate, thanks so much for joining us, Frugo.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
I'll bring you guys into the mix because otherwise I'll just sit here and talk for an hour. But Ubi, I'll start off with you and just sort of say as we're going generally with The War Within. And like I said, I'm going to personally try and temper my gush fest, even though I do want to gush. I want to be realistic and be like, hey, this house of cards could all tumble tomorrow. I don't know. But all I know is I'm having fun for now. But, you said something the other day that kind of resonated where, and I'm trying to remember what it was as I had it in my mouth about 3 seconds ago and now I've forgotten. But it's kind of getting over the hump and just giving it a go and fighting through that knee-jerk desire to quit as soon as you encounter something you raise an eyebrow over. You know what I mean?
I believe I called it boomer vomit.
Boomer vomit, yeah.
The boomer reaction to, I don't know what this is. I'm annoyed. Fuck this. I'm out. And if you just gave it 2 more minutes of honest effort, you'd go, kind of cool.
And look, we know, I'm seeing people in the Discord, we know people who, and there's not necessarily anything wrong with this, guys. I would still implore people to, power through and keep trying. But we know people who are like, nah, art style, bullshit, don't like it, fuck this. And that's not just World of Warcraft retail that they might say this about. I fought the fight many times with friends of mine over Final Fantasy XIV. I'm like, try this game. It's kind of like really good fun. Nah, art style, not fucking playing it. And I'm like, what if the gameplay is really good, but you don't like the art style? Well, if I don't like the art style, I'm out. And I'm like, okay, well, you kind of can't lead a horse to water. And if you don't like the art and you don't want to play a game because of it, that's fine. But if you're sort of like tempted to push through, do it. And it's not just the art, it's many other things. They go, no, system's too complicated. Not doing it, fuck this. No, my class, I confusing talent tree, not doing it, I'm out. I just pushed through. And I was super confused those first few days. I had no idea what I was doing. All new classes, all new professions, everything works differently. I took the time, and not that much time, to just have a bit of a read, teach myself a little bit about what's changed. And I know barely nothing, but I know more than I did a week ago. And I've really enjoyed everything that I've learned. And it's not that confusing, and it's not that tough. And Marcus, is much of this sort of ringing a bell with you in terms of like pushing through that pain point and just having to teach yourself a new game?
Yeah, I think so, man. Like, I've found myself in the same sort of situation where like the game is just infuriatingly confusing to me. It's not what it used to be. It's not the game I love anymore. But I've kind of pushed through those initial negative thoughts and feelings, and man, I'm having a blast.
Let me throw it to you, Parallax, and just sort of say, like, my advice to people would be, and this is just the very, very generic first point that we're hitting on as we're talking about this stuff, is my advice to people would just be like, kind of do what I did and just set yourself more a time frame, as opposed to don't just play the game and just be like, oh, I'm just going to see how I go. And then you do invariably just quit as soon as you hit a pain point. What I did instead was I was like, all right, I'm giving this thing like, 2 weeks. and I will play a bunch over the course of the 2 weeks, and no matter what infuriates me, I'll plow through, keep going, and see how I feel. Did you feel that as a player making the conversion? I mean, you might have played retail this whole time, but if you were giving advice for a classic player to sort of not convert, but also try retail, what would you tell them to do?
Yeah. So, yeah, full disclosure, I've always just played classic and retail. I've been jumping back between both of them since classic came back out in 2019. So, my style has always kind of been like a try it for a couple of weeks or a couple of months thing, and then when I finish what I wanted to finish, I sort of finish it out and then come back later when there's new content. But yeah, I think that is good advice. Right now is a really good time because a lot of people, it's new to everybody, whether or not they've been playing retail the whole time. So there's new systems, new zones. You know, everyone's just kind of chilling. The eye level ceiling isn't super high, so there's not a lot of separation between players. It's a good time to just sort of chill out, turn on the in-game music, vibe out, and just have a good time.
Yubi, I just remembered what it was you said that really resonated with me, and I'll get you to kick off this portion of the conversation. But just that when I say that I haven't enjoyed WoW this much in years, and probably since like 2019 Classic, and before that 2005 or 6 for me, vanilla. You said that you wake up every day genuinely excited to log on, and that you sit at work and all you're thinking about is rushing home to log on and do some stuff in retail. I have completely felt the same way. I'm in a weird space right now where, like, you know, I remember I had on the podcast years and years and years ago, one of the first 30 episodes, an IRL friend of mine who was really hardcore into WoW back in 04, 05, 06. And he said something that I've never forgotten on the podcast, where he was like, I was so into the game, I was seeing it in my real life. I was driving the car and seeing and thinking of like mining ores. I was going to bed at night and dreaming. I was literally dreaming of WoW and then waking up and wanting to play. Now, whilst I haven't quite been that extreme, I've been going to bed thinking of, they are the last thoughts that go through my head. I'm thinking of retail WoW, thinking what I want to do, thinking what would be cool to try. And I'm waking up in the morning so excited to log on. I rush to my computer like a 12-year-old on a weekend and turn it on at 7 o'clock in the morning and go, yes, all right, let's go. And I'm constant. Whenever I get pulled away from the game, all I'm thinking about is when I can dive back in next. And I can tell you, I love SOD, but I didn't get that feeling through SOD. I did mostly get that feeling through 2019 Classic, but, you know, I really felt that way in 04, 05, 06 vanilla, 06 for me, like I say. But fucking Yubi, just to throw it back to that comment, like, is that how you feel still, and why are you feeling that way?
Yeah, I guess it's just because there is so much to do in the game at the moment. I mean, I'm out here just finishing every rare on the map and finding every single treasure just to push the renown along. But yeah, I am in that boat. I felt this way for SOD launch and Classic launch, where I can't fucking wait to come home and just play my next 90 minutes or whatever I get in every day. So it's been fun.
Frugo, mate, I'll just throw it to you. Tell me why you're enjoying The War Within.
What I really like about it is this is my first time really kind of playing retail since, like, I don't know, since I was like in high school, right? Like Cataclysm. And what I really like about it is in Season of Discovery and Classic, like, I run a guild, a pretty big guild, and it's a lot of responsibility. Probably spend most of my time in spreadsheets, not actually playing the game. And retail, it's nice because you can do a lot solo. You can just fly around the world, do world quests, and just like chill out, listen to the in-game music or podcasts or whatever, and just relax. But at the same time, you can group up with people when you want to do heroics, mythics, you know, whatever. But you're not forced to. Versus Classic, which is good. I think the community aspect of things is very important. But in Classic, like, if you want to do a strat dead because you need, you know, a certain item, you have to find people to group with to do that. So, if you're on a server who doesn't really have it, you'd have to just, log in, try to find a group. If you can't, you can log off without being able to do anything. But retail, you can just kind of chill out and get some stuff done and relax. So
it's an interesting point you raised there, and I'll throw this one. Welcome everyone who I've just invited. Thank you so much for joining in on the call. Zim, mate, we'll get to the Shaman in about 45 odd minutes, mate, if you can chill out a little bit until then. But more than welcome to chime in on retail if you happen to be playing. Hi, Stan, Mike, Arcos, Undercover, everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Just jump in whenever, guys. But I'll just say this much. Like, it's interesting that you say that, Frugo, because that's obviously a point that the average classic player would, justifiably jump on. And they'd say, lol, like, here you guys are pumping up and praising a game for delivering you an MMO, for delivering you the single player experience, when we all know that MMOs are supposed to be built on the social structure, and this is about playing with a bunch of people, and retail now encourages you not to play with people, and what a fucking joke of a game. Oh my god, look at all the solo content they've introduced. What a joke, blah, blah, blah. And there is something to that argument. I understand where they're coming from. Vanilla, the greatest game ever made. Fucking, you could only do shit with groups. The solo part of the game is relatively small, all that stuff. I am obviously the kind of player, as I've very, very publicly made known for years, that gravitates towards solo content. I'm a weird vanilla WoW player. I'm not big on grouping up. I like to do shit alone, even if it makes my life harder. I just like to do shit alone. Retail really delivers that for me. So, people could say, oh, well, for the weirdos like Josh, then sure, it's a great game. But other than that, it's shithouse. But I don't know. What I'm asking here, guys, is even though I enjoy it as a single player game in a weird way, and I do all the beautiful open world content that there's everything on the map for me to go and do, I can do delves and all this shit, I do still feel like I'm playing an MMO at the end of the day. Like, there's people out there, I can, group up for dungeons and all that stuff. But do you feel like the War Within has gone too far in terms of the single player experience or not?
I think it's just right.
Yeah, why, Marcus?
I've always sort of struggled in the same way. Like, I'll get bored of the game if I don't have like friends logging on and stuff like that, and then I'll log out. But the way that they've shifted like PvP towards like to accommodate solo players, that was I think that's perfect with the battleground blitzes and stuff like that. And Delves has actually got me interested in PvE content, so they've kind of won me over.
Yeah, the full end game, like the real hardcore stuff, the stuff that the serious players are going to be doing, there's no solo experience for that. You're still going to have to group up with people to do a raid. I mean, you gotta group up to people with 5 people to do Mythic Plus. So,
Absolutely,
yeah, that's true in the PvE sense. But you look at all the really skilled PvP players; they're sort of gravitating towards solo shuffle and battleground blitz.
that's true.
It's one of those things where, do you feel that retail WoW has torn down the concept of social fabric in an MMO? Or has everything they've done just been practical? I don't know. I don't want to talk it up too much, because like, I appreciate the positivity of community and relying on each other and, forcing people to make friends and group up and do shit. But I've always said, like, my ideal MMO has a boatload of stuff for me to do as a solo player as well. And the War Within is delivering it in droves. Like, there is so much content for me to do. It's ridiculous that I don't need anyone else for. And I love that. And when I'm in the mood for people, there's a shitload of stuff for that too. And I like that.
I think what the War Within is really set apart this is that they've offered a lot of solo content, but at the same time they've broken down all the barriers that stop people from playing with each other. So like, the other day you posted in Discord, hey, does anybody want to do some heroics? Not one of us had to think, oh, what server is he on? What faction does he play? Anything like that, or even what item level you are. We're just like, yeah, I want to do heroics with you, because they broke down all those barriers. You can do anything. It doesn't matter what alt you play, because all the account wide. It doesn't matter what server you play. It's all whatever. It doesn't even matter what faction you play. So I think that's pretty cool.
I just on that, Yubi, can I throw it to you? Then I'll come back to you, Undercover. On this very point, you've been harping on about this justifiably so over the last couple of days. And I think, I'll paraphrase you, but I want you to sort of elaborate to the point that, like, we all bitch and moan and discuss server issues in Classic and everything. And, smaller servers are good for community. No, make a mega server. Do this, do that. What faction are you? What server are you? Like we just said, now they're doing this big server consolidation in SOD that has been, the news has been so positively received on the whole. Obviously, there's some people who are like, this is bad, but they're an extreme minority. But I've been saying on the show, this is the future of MMO gaming. Servers are going to change. Mega servers are how things are going to be. I'm sorry, guys, but it's kind of get on board or be left behind. With the War Within, just like Frugo said, and you mentioned this the other day, everyone is elated that we can all just play together and we don't have all the headaches are thrown away of the Classic game in terms of servers. And in my mind, nobody's complaining. So why do we all complain about it in Classic?
Yeah, it's the interesting thing. I don't know if people are just fucking devil's advocates on any topic and not actually truly want what they say that they're wanting or whatever, but in this, you've been given, we are all on a mega server, and I mean, I'm like, even mind you, I don't think factions not mattering is a good thing for Classic, but like retail has gone that far up the storyline that it's kind of degraded the fact that we're supposed to hate each other anyway. But yeah, it's just been funny that like so many people that have jumped in have said, "Oh, are you guys on Horde?" and like, "What server you're on?" And I'm talking 10 to 20 people. You've told, mate, it doesn't matter. Just log on. You can even join our fucking guild from your server. Like that's how. And every single person has just said, "Wow, that's awesome."
Yeah,
that's good. Now I don't have to level up again or whatever.
The one knock I'll give it, just as a bit of a PSA, if people don't know, because I didn't know this. Yes, you can play cross faction with friends, but for some weird reason, maybe it's the tech or whatever, you need to have a full party. You can't have like 2 or 3 of you cross faction and then jump in the queue finder because it just won't let you do it. It'll be like, no, that's not on. So I feel like that has to change. That's a little bit frustrating, but at least there's some workaround in terms of, get 4 mates, and if 2 of you are Horde and 3 of you are Alliance, it doesn't matter. You can queue up for a dungeon, but otherwise you can't. Hopefully they fix that. That was a little bit frustrating. But Undercover, sorry, I cut you off before, mate. You were saying something?
No, it's all good. Yeah, I mean, so I haven't played the War Within yet, but everything you are describing kind of reminds me what I've been missing in Classic and what wants to make me play well. I think a huge issue with WoW is that the minority are so fucking loud about these random things. Like someone was having an argument in some YouTube comment about how the new servers coming out should be hardcore, and it's like, I see the appeal for it, but you have to be able to take a step back and realize what the majority are interested in. Like, majority of people don't want to play hardcore. I don't know if they want to run vanilla back again already come November. Like, it's, and it's, I don't know, just tying it to retail, it's the whole solo kind of content that they are rolling out, I think is much more appealing. I also think other people think it's much more appealing. Like, it kind of reminds me of playing like Fable or something, And then if you want to socialize and play with other people, like, you can go and do that too. Like, I don't really see an issue with it as long as people enjoy it. There's no reason to not enjoy it just because you just want to be difficult. Like, it's I don't know. I'm not sure.
I fucking knew he'd turn up. It's like, the scene in Jaws where Roy Scheider's throwing the chum in the water, and then you get that famous shot of the shark appearing. Here's Jason as we started talking about retail. Mates, how are you?
Oh, Josh, hello. Yes, I mean, we've been talking about War Within a little bit. I was actually going to hit you up tonight and be like, hey, man, if you need somebody to talk about War Within on the show, let me know.
Well, I was planning on grabbing you in about 2 weeks because, like I said, I wanted the honeymoon period to end. And the plan, I thought of this a month ago. I was like, I've got to DM Jason and say about a month after launch, would he be willing to come on Countdown to chat about it? And now we don't even sort of like. I mean, I was going to do that anyway, but we're here early because
Well, we can do that too.
because
I'll
I'm
probably be
actually
available.
playing. Yeah, we can do that too. I mean, that'd be great. But like, if without sort of setting you too much, I know you're probably going to have a lot to say, but without setting you too much up for a 20-minute monologue on gushing over the War Within, I'll just throw you in the mix with the boys and everyone, and just sort of say like, you know, you were listening along live there on stream. From everything we've said over the last 20 minutes. Does much of that sort of make sense to you? And how do you feel about this expansion and widening the audience for WoW?
I mean, I think it's really smart from a, just from a product perspective, right? Like we can kind of debate the merits of social play versus solo play or whatever. I think the solo experience or like the more casual experience has always been underserved in this game. And like there are people who buy the game and they pay for their sub and they just play solo and then they get bored and they check out or whatever, right? So, giving those players more stuff to do is just better. They didn't take anything away, right? And the real test starts Tuesday. Once we actually get into season roll, what does the raid look like? What do like reasonably difficult dungeons look like? How does tuning feel? What is the reward structure feeling like? And then the week after that, then we get the actual difficult raid, the most difficult dungeons, all that stuff starts clicking. So we've had a real long kind of slow burn here, and honeymoon period. And for my kind of play style, I don't really know what any of this is going to look like yet, because if the tuning is out of whack or, the in-game content ends up not really landing, then all that stuff is going to be, I mean, we know it's going to be in flux, right? We just got patch notes for PTR yesterday, and they're doing a ton of class reworks and rebalancing right out of the gate. The tuning has to feel good, and it's probably not going to immediately. The question is always, how long is it going to take for it to feel good? But I mean, I think the way they presented this expansion overall, they took some big leaps, in terms of how they present the story, how it's woven in so many different things that you experience as a player, the production values around the way some of the, the cutscenes are presented and the story beats play out. Just really strong, they've done some stuff they never did before with some of the ways that the story kind of unfolds. And I mean, the warband quality of life upgrade is so huge, and it's making so many people just take a different approach to the game, myself included. I have 4 characters at level 80 already, which is very early for me. And it's like with delves and being able to kind of play at your own pace, I have purpose for those characters without maybe adding on, multiple additional, 2, 3, 4 hour long WoW nights just to play a character that I want to check out at endgame. I've never had that before.
The warband stuff, and I'll open this one up to the crowd, guys. Anyone jump in if you want to talk about warbands for a second. But the warband stuff is I want to say the unsung hero of this expansion, but it's a sung hero. Like, people are openly gushing about this system. It's fantastic. And like, it's funny that I remember reading about the announcement of the warband system whenever it was announced, and I sort of didn't really give a fuck, mostly because I didn't play retail, but also like in reading the system, I was like, oh, that's cool, but like, whatever, shoulder shrug. Now, having played it and engaged with it, it is amazing. And like, I know that people call in Season of Discovery for things like account-wide reputation gains and shit like that, but once you actually experience it, it's wild. It's like, I know we got things like, you can have an account-wide attunement process, so you only have to do a Nixia once in Season of Discovery. Fantastic. That's great. But seeing what it does to a player like me with my army of alts already in retail, like Jason, you said you got 580s already. I've already got like 4 level 70 plus characters. Like I've got 180, about 3 level 70s and a level 67 or something, which is weird because I just started playing retail like 3 seconds ago. And I only had one. I'll tell you this, Jason. 2 weeks ago, I had one character in retail, a level 66 Shaman. That Shaman has not moved at all, and I've leveled up. I know it takes 2.5 seconds to level in retail, but I've leveled up 4 other characters to near max because I'm just enjoying all these classes. But the warband thing is so huge to be like, I can jump on any character and all my progress is saved and I don't have to do it again in terms of reputations and shit like that. Like flying around the map and being like, hey, I'm actually just dicking around on an ult, but I'm helping my main. Feels amazing. Anyone else on the warband system?
I'm pretty keen to just transfer some honor around, man. Like, I'm pretty happy about that.
Can
So
you
I don't
can you
have to
shift
go
honor?
through that. Yeah.
What?
It's like 75% effectiveness or something.
Oh.
But you don't have to. You only have to put up with that initial getting bashed up in BGs punish like once, and then you can just keep doing BGs on your main, and then shift that onto your ult at a reduced rate, which is a lot better. Not only for like most people playing the BGs, because a lot of people will be using their geared characters to do it, but it kind of makes it hard to cut in. But once you're in, man, it's a really good system, I think.
Can you, Jason, do you know, I haven't looked into this. Can you transfer the currencies? I know you can do a lot of them, but the war within main currencies, your resonance crystals and your other one that I forget the name of.
Yep.
You can?
Yeah, resonance crystals and Kej you can.
No, but not what's the main one?
Valor Stones.
Yeah, Valor
Stones.
Stones.
Valor Stones and Crest don't, because those are sort
Ah.
of what those are used for primarily is direct item level upgrades
Yeah.
on gear that a character has acquired. So they're really like direct, current, relevant in-season power, and that's one of the reasons why those have been sort of left out of the transfer between character system.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I play my main a lot. Like I am a true main. I mean, my first ever character that I ever made is still my main to this day. and she's
You're
gonna
warrior,
turn
right?
20 years old. Yeah, she's about to turn 20 years old in November.
What spec are you playing?
Prot only forever.
That's the way.
But so I do everything on her, right? Like I do all the world class, I do all the weeklies, everything that's on the map, I do it. Dungeons with my friends, whatever. I banked up a ton of resonance crystals on her, and then my other characters hit 80. I pass off, the 2,600 crystals per piece for the renowned vendors. They get 3 really nice pieces of epic gear as soon as they hit 80, ready to start diving into, whatever content I want to do. It really feels nice to be able to use that stuff for something. In the past couple expansions, the resonance crystals were called supplies. It was always some kind of a supply, and the icon was like a crate, and it was not very thematic, and you ended up with just more of it than you were ever going to use about 2 weeks into the expansion. And this time it's like, this feels like a really cool and important reward right now, because I can move it around to whatever tune needs it, and then maybe I'll level another tune because I can instantly deck them out in 3 really nice pieces of gear just by moving the crystals I already earned over to them.
No, it's great. Hey, Mike, how you going, man?
Hey, Josh, how's it going?
Good. We've been speaking, sort of hanging out at nights in Discord anyway, but it's been a long time since I think you've been on the show last, mate. Listeners will be getting a kick out of hearing your voice again. Mate, if I can just throw you a sort of thing to get you rolling. It's funny that we had a moment about, 5 nights ago, where about 7 of us at, 7 o'clock on a fucking Wednesday night or something here in Australia, about 7 of us jumped in voice chat randomly, and everyone saw people were hanging out and started piling in. It was like, you, me, Ubiquitous, Marcus, Voodoo, Hunk, or not Hunk, sorry, Alenya, someone else might have been there, I'm forgetting, apologies. But we all sat there and had a beer together, or you had a glass of water and, shooting the shit, and sort of started saying, hey, out of interest, what are you playing? Oh, I'm playing retail. What are you playing? I'm playing retail too. Oh, yeah, I'm playing retail too. And it was like all these classic players sort of like coming out with, yeah, I'm actually playing retail right now. It's quite funny because we're all big classic guys and got involved heavily in the podcast. And you said like, mate, I haven't played since fucking the end of Kata and I'm playing retail now. Tell us a bit more about that, Mike.
So I guess I got really bored of Season of Discovery like during Phase 3, as most people did, and I just stopped playing. And I just, then after a while, I like, it was kind of funny how it happened. Literally, like about a week and a half ago, I completely unsubscribed from WoW. I was ready to just stop playing, and then Alenia starts talking about the War Within. She's like, "Oh, I want to play, and I really want you to play with me." And I'm like, "Oh, it's retail. I don't know." And I kind of just like dismissed her a little bit. And then another day goes by, and she asked me again, and I just go, "Fuck it. All right, fine. I'll try it." And I and yeah, as Josh said, I hadn't played retail in literally 12 years. So everything was super overwhelming, but because Alenia asked me to play it, and I want to play with my partner, so it's just like I will get past that like I don't understand this, so I hate it sort of phase. I tried to push through that as much as I could, and I have been really enjoying it.
There you go.
I don't. There's so many things I'm still super ignorant of retail. I barely know fucking anything. But I boosted a rogue to 70. Learned I really didn't like playing that very much because There's something up with rogue and retail that didn't vibe with me. And then I saw a demon hunter. I was like, "Ooh, that looks fun!" And it is the most fun class I think I've ever played in MMO. Whoever designed Demon Hunter, mwah, you're a fucking genius. It is so much fun. I have to admit.
I'll throw it around to the others now. I just want to say one quick thing, Mike, and please, by all means, shut this down if you think I'm speaking out of school. I don't want to go too deep into this, but I just want to say, like, because you do talk about it publicly yourself, but it warms my heart to no end now that you've been in Australia for over a year now, right?
Yeah.
And obviously, like you mentioned, your partner is Alenia, who Countdown to Classic listeners will know through the show. Still warms my heart to no end that you two are going so strong, and the way that you met and everything. Like, it's not like just the ties to Countdown. Just, I don't know. It's romantic, and I love it, and I love you guys. And say hi to her for me.
I will.
Guys, as the Grinch grows a heart here on Countdown to Classic Live, being me, let me throw it around the table and just say, look, does Mike's story resonate with anyone else? I mean, by all means, if anyone has tried The War Within and fucking hates it, let me know. Who haven't we heard from yet? People like Simo, people like Juichi, Stan Dash. Guys, jump in. What are you thinking of it?
Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Great. So War Within, or retail in general, I've only just started playing a couple weeks ago. And I've just really only played SOD. I haven't really played any other versions of WoW. I'm kind of new. But I've always kind of had an aversion to retail because it seemed like way too much. You'd log in, and you'd get an Orgrimmar or something, and there's just shit everywhere. You don't know what the hell's going on, and it's way too overwhelming. But something about the War Within, or at least Dragonflight, I should say, because I started leveling in Dragonflight, it's way more streamlined. It's a lot more friendly. It feels like they made it. Maybe I just jumped in on the wrong time initially, but the progression is very easy to understand, and the story is right in front of your face. And it's really just easy to get into it, in my opinion. So I've really appreciated that.
It's good to hear. It's one of those things where it's just been accessible. Let me just talk a little bit quickly about the classes, and then we will get onto the classic stuff, guys. I don't want to talk about this for hours. I just wanted to get a few things off my chest, but like, let's just shoot the shit casually about what we're doing, what we're playing. If anyone's wondering, I started out, I tweeted about this morning. Blood DK is what I started on. Now, look, I will say this much. Being a bit of a classic guy, I wanted something relatively simple. I will give retail a bit of shit for as much as it wants to be the MMO that grabs everyone. There's a lot of like complicated specs out there, and like, it's funny in that all the specs are accessible in terms of, yeah, you can fire it up and just press your buttons and shit will happen and you'll kill the mob, but there's half the specs in the game that I don't like, with the whole like, oh, you know, I joked about this a few times, going like, if if the fucking sky was red this morning and you know, your dog woke up on the left side of the bed and you know, you put your left shoe on first, then this ability hits 60% harder. Like all these qualifications to these abilities that starts to get quite convoluted. I gravitate away from those classes. I don't like that. That's for sweatier nerds than me. I'm not into it. It has real like intense Magic the Gathering vibes of like you read a novel on how this card works and you're like, I mean, I think I get it, but I don't. I've started with Blood DK, which is funny because a lot of people say Blood DK is like the hardest tank or one of the hardest tanks. For some reason, it clicked with me. I didn't find it that difficult or annoying. The buttons seemed about right. I found it easier than Prot Warrior. I found it easier than not easier than Prot Paladin. I just liked it better than Prot Paladin. But anyway, I blasted Blood DK for a week and had a ball, and that got my foot in the door with retail. That really made me go like, oh, this is really fun. Wow, this class is a vibe and fucking all that shit. Just yesterday I went, all right, if I'm actually going to be I've now had my flirtation period with retail. If I'm now going to be semi-serious about it, I need to have a real think on what class I want to play. And even though I'll play a few, I want to figure out what to spend the majority of my time with. I tried Fury Warrior for the first time last night and just fell in love with it. Mainly because I'm like, I don't know if I am going to start doing like Mythic Zeros or more serious content just beyond heroics. I can't be a tank. I just can't. Even though tanking is far more accessible and easier than I had been told in retail, I thought, you know, if I played a tank, I'd get flamed straight away, blah, 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 blah. None of that happened. Like everyone was super chill, super cool. I could do what I wanted. You know, I was going slow, I was going fast, everything in between. Nobody said shit. Tanking was fine. It's been far overblown in terms of, you know, that's more for the mythic enjoyers when you get flamed for being a shit tank. But I just figured that as a newbie, I don't want the responsibility of being a tank. That's a bit much for me. It's fun now in week 1 and 2, but it won't be fun soon until I really know the game better. So I need to switch probably to a DPS or a healer. So I've picked up Fury Warrior, and even though it's not 80 yet, I will probably go on with that. It's really, really fun. The AoE damage is bonkers. I can't get enough of it. It's wild. So that's kind of what I'm doing. If I can throw it around to the table and sort of say, guys, tell me about the class or spec that's had you fall in love with either that class or that's made you open your eyes to the war within. And sorry, let me say one last thing that'll get your juices flowing. I'm talking with Yubi a lot about this. Even though we've slightly mentioned this on the show months and months ago, very convinced now that SOD was created as a testing ground, yes, but also as the gateway drug for kata and retail. The amount of abilities I'm seeing in retail now and being like, oh, that's just from SOD, and you feel a little bit more comfortable and at home after playing SOD for 9 months with these abilities. Things that would have made my head spin 9 months ago. The maniacal geniuses did it, where they slowly weaned classic players into a state where they'd be more comfortable with retail through class design. And I've got more to say about that later on, but that's for another day maybe. Guys, tell me about your spec. What are you loving about it? What are you hating about it? How are you going with it?
I've been a Shadow Priest stan for like 20 years, so I'm just sticking with what I at least half know. But I'm gonna try and learn Rogue and Retail as my first ult.
But you're enjoying your Priest, aren't you?
Yeah, but I've always liked it, so I guess it's a biased take. But I never even minded when they went to the Insanity Void theme of Shadow Priest. I find that pretty cool, and yeah, it has been fun. And I did get a rotation helper because I'm such a boomer, and it did make me do a fuckload more damage. And I mean, once you start to play any given spec, you'll begin to figure it out. But like the rotation helper made things click in like, oh, okay, these two things are overlapping, and this talent is impacting those. So that's why you want to cast this now. more than what my own just guessing and logic would have led me down. So that's been pretty helpful.
Yeah. You've got your rotation helper. Can you, sorry, Marcus, I'll throw it to you in one sec. Can you explain to people, Yubi, real quick, how you would describe what I use in my weak auras when I showed you my Blood DK gameplay the other day?
Your UI would probably cause strokes and aneurysms across the player base. I don't know how your brain interprets that fucking screen as useful information, but you're out there doing your best.
I'll explain it to me. Like, obviously, you know, some people can read sheet music. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how I see my weak auras. It's sheet music.
That's a good way. That's a good way to put it. Yours is you've got sheet music there, and I have zero fucking musical genes in me at all. So
I'll have to show you, Jason, one day. You will laugh so hard and just vomit when you see my fucking weak auras pop up when I jump in combat. Covers half my screen. Marcus, sorry,
Get
mate.
it up on stream so we can all.
Oh, you would laugh so much. Marcus, mate, you were doing your mage thing because you were like, I've always been a mage. You know, I'll do this thing. You want to heal, and out of nowhere, you sort of went like, oh, what's this new evoker all about? Tell us about how you've been going with it.
It's very different, but it's also like surprisingly familiar as well. Like it's a strange class is the best way that I could describe it, but incredibly fun. Like the positioning, the offense. I feel like I'm just going to have an absolute blast with this class in PvP.
Oh man, and I keep saying it, but I promise. You and I are going to have some PvP fun. Like very soon,
sure.
I fucking promise you. My Fury Warrior, your Evoker, hopefully that's some kind of a decent combination. We'll go out and just annihilate pricks.
Yeah, I think just keeping your health bar full will be pretty useful if you stay in range. But I've got that ability.
Yeah.
I linked you last night. I can just swoop you, mate.
That's right. You've got about a 200-yard range on your heels, right? I can just go forth and do whatever I want.
It's a real. That's the other thing I really like about this class. It's a real dirty healing like feeling. Like you're right up close. You're in the mix. You're sort of living on the edge. You can get CC'd at any time. Like I can sort of think it's going to be pretty exciting to play. I'm really looking forward to it.
Who haven't we heard from here? Let's go. Stan, are you there, mate?
Yep.
Mate, are you playing War Within?
You guys just talked me into it.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, there you go. Blizzard, I'll take my commission. Thanks for that. I joke, but like Jason, you'll get a laugh out of this. There'll be people listening to this who are like, oh, here we go. Blizzard has fucking worded him up behind the scenes and forced him to do fucking War Within content. Like they're infiltrating everywhere, even the classic content creators. But
Yep.
It's
true. Blizzard loves all of us, all of their little podcaster children, and all the support that they give us all the time.
And they secretly, well, not so secretly, the puppet strings are visible. You know what I mean?
Of course. That's why we do this kind of thing, right? Is to
just to be told what to do by Blizzard, exactly, and to cash in. Yeah. I showed Yubi just yesterday. I was like, oh, Yubi, I made $15 this week on YouTube. I'm rich. And he's like, mate, that's a pint of beer. And I was like, fuck yeah.
The
rich get richer, yeah.
Demon Hunter, as someone who's completely just dove into this class after, experiencing it for the first time, basically.
Yeah, so tell me why you're loving it and why it speaks to you even as a classic player.
So actually, I enjoy it because it feels nothing like anything in Classic. It is so I'm enjoying it because I guess when I'm playing a game like this, I just like having my brain engaged 100% of the time. And this class has it's like it looks complicated but feels simple is how I feel about this class. You have so many different buttons to press at every given time because you have so many abilities for single target AoE, but it just feels super engaging to me. I think if I like look through my spellbook again, I probably have like almost a dozen abilities that are all just fucking AoE, and I have never played a class that does so much AoE damage. It's fucking ludicrous, and I love it. Maybe because it's just so foreign from like the classic Andy classes I've played, where you just have like next to no AoE, and now I just feel like an AoE god with something always to press all the time. It just feels so much fun.
On that note, I'll just take us down this slight sidetrack, and everyone can jump in on this. Like, I am understanding of some of the criticisms towards retail. I really am. And like I said, one of them was the solo player thing that we just touched on. Another that Mike raised is that pull towards AoE in the more modern game, and this like group them all up, burn them all down mentality. The game definitely does feel a bit more Diablo-esque. I used to hate that. For some reason in the War Within, I've been much more okay with it. But I understand the gripe of the classic Andy going, back in my day, we pulled 4 mobs and that was about it. Even though that's not necessarily the case. Obviously, you can pull bigger and, you know, do whatever. But, like, you know what I mean. We didn't pull, you know, like on my Blood DK, I can confidently pull 20 mobs and pop my defensives and burn them all down. It's a lot of fun, but there's a small part of my brain that goes, this feels wrong. So I get that. But talk to me, you other guys, about how you feel about that. Go, Yubi.
I think in retail, I said this at the Discord, you have to appreciate the way that your class does it. So, like, yes, everyone can AoE, but my AoE operates significantly different from your AoE, thematically and mechanically. So, like, as a Shadow Priest, and sorry, let me add in, I think the reversal to these style of talent trees, I can only speak for Shadow Priest, I think that's helped this sense of like identity and how your class does it, because you build your talent tree out and that will dictate how you fucking blow everything up. But like Shadow Priest, for example, I have a really cool talent called Psychic Link, and pretty much every single target that I've put Vampiric Touch on will receive 30% of my single target damage. So I dot the fuck out of everything in the room, and then I just pump one target. And this talent makes all the targets that are afflicted from me take a bit of mental damage each from my single target rotation. I find that pretty cool. And then the additional part of Shadow Priest is that when you're dealing damage to all these things, little ghost versions of yourself float off towards those targets and hit them or explode. And like, I think that's much cooler than fucking pressing Whirlwind. But Warrior Bros love pressing Blade Storm, and we're both just blowing up 20 mobs each.
Yeah.
So you kind of got to get more into your own class and how you appreciate how they blow shit up, more than, oh, I'm the single target guy and he's the AoE guy. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
It's like, nah, he whirlwinds and I fucking dot everything up and melt their brains from the inside.
Jason, if I can throw it to you. So sorry, Mike, 1 second. I just want to get Jason's. So you go, Mike, and then I'll throw it to Jason. Fuck Jason.
I kind of just wanted to bounce off Ubiquitous. Like, so there's a talent for Demon Hunter. We have this is just one AoE ability I have. It's called Immolation Aura, and you press it and it does some initial damage and then does some ticking damage in an AoE. But you get a talent where it gives you charges, and then every time you press it, it has a 30% chance to refund you that charge. So at some points, when I pull a pack of mobs, I can literally just sit there, and also this stacks, I should say. I forgot. And you can literally, I've been able to just literally sit there and just spam Immolation Aura and get like 10 stacks with like super RNG, and it just feels so much fun just sitting there, just spamming that and just watching the insane AoE damage happen.
Jason, if I can throw it to you, mate, and just say, you know, do you understand where I'm coming from, where I query whether or not the turn that the retail game took years ago towards like mass AoE, whether it's been a good thing or a bad thing. Like I say, I really do think it's scratching the itch of the modern player who does like that Diablo, like I want to feel powerful and kill 100 things at any one time, whether it's good or bad for me or not. But, you know, I sort of bring up the analogy of like, you know, like junk food. Like, you know, we love eating junk food. We know that it's bad for us, but we just want to do it because it's fun. And it's kind of like, I like Ubiquitous has said, all this AoE shit on all the classes I've tried, be it the Affliction Warlock with their really fun AoE stuff, the Fury Warrior is just bonkers. If you want to do AoE damage in a dungeon, roll a Fury Warrior. But like, it's fun as fuck, and I guess that's why we play games. But is it right to query whether or not it's been taken too far or whether it's good or bad for us as MMO players?
Oh, Josh, I could talk to you about this for about 2 hours, man. So the thing about this is, it is better now than it was in terms of like the bad parts of this. Because I agree with the main thesis that like all the AOE, just pull everything, AOE it all down, is it's okay as a sometimes treat, but it's not really like the gameplay that a lot of us really want. You know, I think MOP Remix was a great example of that, right? Because that was super fun this summer on your way up the power curve, and then you became a literal god. You blew up the entire screen in one GCD, and that stopped being fun really fast. But you know, there's a reason why it was a limited time event. In BFA, like that's where they started messing around with removing target caps, and you know, it was the second expansion that had Keystone Dungeons, and there were a lot of mechanics that involved just massive pulls and everybody just AOEing their faces off. They tried to bring that stuff back at the beginning of Shadowlands, and it was not very popular. They wanted to put target caps on a bunch of stuff, and people really didn't like that. So there's been this sort of ongoing push and pull between this kind of stuff. They did eventually dial it back quite a bit in Dragonflight, and the talent system has helped with that immensely because it lets you set up your toolkit for different situations. So adding that kind of granularity to the classes, it introduces more texture to the combat just by its nature, right? Just because you have these tools now. At the very end of Dragonflight, like in the pre-patch, essentially, they nerfed tanks' defensiveness, right? So tanks are taking more damage, and they nerf self-healing like across the board. So all classes are a little bit less leechy, less self-sustaining. Tanks are taking slightly more damage. They nerfed healing a bit across the board in terms of like output, which is actually like increases healing interactivity because you have to cast more heals. And because tanks are taking more damage, there's more damage to heal. And then they also increased health pools of basically everything in the game so that combat should last a little bit longer. I have been on this thing for a long time that texture in WoW combat is essential. The Holy Trinity is essential, and we don't want to blur those lines. Like, what feels good is for the tank to be rewarded for playing well defensively and for controlling combat so that the DPS can blast away and that the healer is keeping everything safe and under control. That's what feels really rewarding about playing group content in WoW from day one. So I think the changes that they're making and the changes that we're seeing in Keystones in terms of how they're reworking the concept of affixes, I think that all plays into it. So, I mean, the response that I got from the Starting Zone audience was like overwhelmingly positive about the comments I made on the show about preserving that combat texture. I think there's a time and a place where like a giant AoE pull is really fun, right? But you can have one really big mob that you fight for a while, or you can have like a true like TBC style AoE pull of 8 or 12 or 16 non-elite mobs or something like that. You can introduce these different situations in a dungeon or a raid instance that a different tool is appropriate for that job. So I think what I'm seeing from the dev team is that they are cognizant of this stuff because they are making these changes to try to just I think probably generally the audience doesn't want to go back to TBC heroic dungeon style, Sheep Moon and Trap Square, and we're gonna pull 2 mobs out of this pack at a time. We want to be in combat with stuff, but it's like, all right, kick this, stun that, move away from this, whatever. It's a little bit more interactive, right? The way that you're reacting to combat is not lock this thing down for a minute and go around the corner. It's watch out when this happens, use careful positioning, use the abilities in your toolkit proactively. I think it feels a lot better. And I mean, there's always going to be players who would rather just round up 25 mobs and there's no target caps. And just as long as you can keep the tank alive, then you're killing everything in this hallway at once. But I don't know. I think probably the average player really likes that traditional WoW. It's always been one of the strongest elements of WoW, right? Is the combat. So I think preserving that, it to some degree, as much as they can in a modern context, is really important.
And mythic dungeons are going to sort of force people to settle down a little bit anyway, right?
Well, certainly out of the gate, yeah. I mean, this week coming up with regional resets on Tuesday, we only get Mythic Zero, which is going to be way harder than anything we've had in War Within so far, but it doesn't scale up. So as you get drops and stuff out of those dungeons, as you increase the item level, the stuff you have, you're going to curve out pretty nicely against those Mythic Zeros. They made a huge change to the overall structure of dungeon difficulty mid Dragonflight. So a Mythic Zero used to be not very challenging compared to a heroic dungeon. Stuff scaled up a little bit, might have a new mechanic. It wasn't that big of a deal. What they have done is they've positioned it like halfway up the old Mythic Keystone track. So it's equivalent to about what a Mythic plus 10 used to be, which used to be where all of the affixes would kick in and that you'd sort of have that, the full scope of challenge of the dungeon, and then it would just be health and damage would scale up from there. So they've reworked this a lot, but basically what I'm saying is a Mythic Zero is going to be a lot harder than a heroic dungeon in this modern context, in this, post-Dragonflight context. It's also going to be a lot more rewarding.
Oh, it needs to be, though. Like, heroics, this is the one thing I've been talking to Marcus about. Like, you'll laugh at this, I was genuinely, like, wary of heroics. I mean, obviously, as a new tank as well and being, sort of a bit unsure of myself, but I was really, really scared, in a way, of running into a heroic, going like, oh, this is going to be tough. I don't know the mechanics. What am I going to do? And then I started doing them, and it's like, no, it's still ignore mechanics and you push it over and it's actually a joke. Like, the game needs Mythic because heroics are fucking, like, are a joke.
Yeah, I assured you in those first couple runs, Josh, that we can ignore the mechanics still, but come Mythic Plus, we're probably not going to be able to.
Yeah. I was shocked. I was really shocked. For some reason, I thought retail heroics were kind of a thing, but they're not.
No, they haven't been for a long time, but
it's got to be there just to show you the mechanics, and then like, okay, now I know what to not stand in.
No, but here's what I mean. It doesn't even show you the mechanics. Like, I still don't know a single mechanic of a single boss in War Within. I've not stopped. I'm a bad guy. I have not stopped to read the dungeon journal on a single fucking boss because I haven't had to care about it.
I still see them casting, so I guess you'll find out what they do in Mythics then when you die, if you stand in something.
Oh, I'm not doing a Mythic dungeon without reading up on all of it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean. If you pay attention, you can see what the boss is doing, but you kind of just go, okay, and just stand in it if you want. Mind you, some of them are just like, oh, you get stunned for 5 seconds and you take a chunk of damage. In heroics, you're still going to want to avoid it because who likes being stunned instead of DPSing or whatever. But it's just there, I guess, as an intro tier.
Hey, Parallax, you're playing Paladin, right?
Yeah, I have a couple classes now. Paladin's kind of always been my main.
Mate, tell us what you're loving about it.
Well, so far I've kind of just been switching between the specs. I think Rhet's playing really nice, so it's kind of like with the hero talent treatment that it got. It's kind of like replacing your wings with basically your what's the big red slash move that you do? Sorry, I'm drawing a blank. Basically it auto pops your wings now, and then your consecrate auto pops with your blade of justice. So there's kind of like some automatic cooldown thing happening, which is really cool. So you're just sort of always just focusing on pumping damage. You have wings up a lot. It's just really fun. But Prot is my main spec for Pally, so Prot's kind of regarded right now. It's yet to be seen once the season actually starts. Prot's kind of regarded as like the worst tank at the moment. The hero talents aren't super fun, but there's a lot of changes. I know this is probably another long discussion. Jason will definitely have it on his podcast, but there's a lot of patch notes coming that we got some promise for the future for what the next patch is going to be like, and there are some complete class reworks in there. So
that's good. Hey, Jason, I forgot to say earlier, by the way, like, mate, you've been talking about it on Twitter and everything. I just want to say, like, from the bottom of my heart, super huge congratulations for you and Spencer and all of the starting zones. Immense success through this period. Like, you guys are absolutely smashing it. I'm seeing all that insane rise through the charts, mate. Great stuff. Just kudos to you and Spencer.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that, and I'll pass along to him as well. I mean, it really is. It's the audience, Our audience has just been so incredible as this sort of rocket has been launching, right? I mean, you just feel it all around, everywhere. Like War Within is really hitting people a little bit different, and our show, obviously we have one topic, and it's retail World of Warcraft. Basically, I mean, we dabble in SOD here and there as well, but it's that every week forever, and we run hot and cold based on how the game is doing. Our show is a barometer for how people are feeling about World of Warcraft, and I mean, this is the kind of charting for us that I've never seen like this in this month or so, in this launch window, where we're consistently top 20 US, single digits like all over the world. It's just unreal. I mean, the audience is just,
But it does.
I think, really hungry for this stuff. They want to know everything they can about War Within. They want to stay connected to it when they can't play, that kind of thing. And I get it. We always put the work into the show through thick and thin, but it feels nice when the vibes are good around the game and everybody wants to talk about it, or talk about something they found, or even talk about some gripe that they don't like about, or wait till they change this or whatever. I mean, that's the fun thing about covering a game like this.
Go, Yubi.
I was going to say, what's the show called?
Oh, the starting zone. This is where I was going to throw in the plug.
Okay.
Everyone, please.
Yeah, I'm going to go fucking sub to it.
Fucking oath. So I've said.
Certainly says nice stuff about his audience, not like Josh.
I know. No, my audience is a fucking pack of cunts. Fuck all of you. Exactly. No, but I've been saying for years, obviously you guys know Jason's been on the show for years. He pops in from time to time to talk about retail. Look, guys, I've said this and it's true. If you like fucking Countdown to Classic, not if you like fucking Countdown to Classic, but if you like Countdown to Classic, you will love the starting zone. If you're a retail player, we're sort of, brother and sister shows in an odd way. Like Spencer and Jason do such an amazing job over there. If you're into retail and you're like, fuck Josh, he doesn't do retail, I need a retail podcast, go to the starting zone. They will sort you out. They have the full endorsement of me, and it's not just because Jason and I are mates, it's because it's a fucking good show. So, there you go. Guys, we might hop off the retail train if that's okay. Like I said, we've been talking for about an hour. I don't want to do a full 4-hour podcast on retail. That might come later. We shall see. This is Countdown to Classic. Let's get back to the classic stuff. Yes, Yubi?
I'll just add a little a thing to end on. If you're going to give retail a try, I've seen a lot of people have gripes with it, and they're things that you can just like turn off or change. So if you get here and you go, what the fuck is this shit? Just Google if you could turn it off. Like, for example, people hate that the quest items are super glowy and stand out in the world. Guess what, brother? You can go full classic mode and it can hide in the shrubbery and it won't glow. You can turn all that shit off. So I just wanted to add that in there because I've seen on a few different topics people are like, I don't like that. Well, that's a tick box, bro. Turn it off.
Well, just the other day, warriors like Jason will think this is heresy. But yesterday I turned off my UI alert that lets me know when Rampage is usable. Because I have my own weak auras for that I prefer. And I was shocked to see that I could just turn it off. It was really cool.
Yeah, it's very edit friendly on retail now. So
they've done a lot of work to the baseline UI in the last 2 expansions, and it was ongoing. I mean, that was a big feature of Dragonflight, was the default UI revamp, and they brought in a lot of cool stuff right away. And one thing we used to stay on Starting Zone all the time was like, this is good, keep it coming. This is a good start. This is long overdue. Keep it coming. And every single patch, all of those patches in Dragonflight, there was a lot. Every single one had UI updates, and we got more in the War Within patch, and there's all kinds of stuff. It's much more granular and customizable than it used to be. And I mean, yeah, you can still do full UI replacement if you want to, but also if you don't want to deal with rebuilding that every time there's a patch or whatever, yeah, you can tweak a lot of stuff in ways that you probably don't realize if you haven't tried it out and looked around what the options actually are.
Yeah, I leveled to 80 with literally 0 add-ons. That's how friendly the UI is by default now. You just customize it and play.
The one add-on I would say classic players, if you're checking it out to get, is I don't think I could play without what was the one you said, Yubi? I use Rare Scanner, but you said Handy Notes.
Oh yeah, you get Handy Notes and then the War Within plugin, and that just really helps you get into the whole treasure hunting and rare finding, because that's a very easy way to get rep and gear pretty early, pretty fast.
Yeah, it's a bit of a game changer. You probably need that one. Last thing I'll say, and then I promise we'll get to the Shaman in SOD. Jason, I think Odin's Fury might be the most fun button I've ever pressed in the history of WoW.
No, that's I-beam. I'll fight you on that I-beam. Play Demon Hunter.
Odin's Fury is like the sound effect combined with the damage. Combined with the relatively frequent cooldown. Yes, my cat is going nuts. I can't. It's like a drug. I'm addicted to it. Like, its Thunderous Roar is great too, but like a bit of a weaker sound effect. Odin's Fury is just like zing. Yes.
Yeah, you know you hit it, right?
Yeah,
when
fucking
when
oath,
push
you
that
know
button,
you hit
hit
it. Yeah.
The thing about Odin's Fury is that it was the artifact active ability from Legion.
All right.
And this is another thing that, like, the big talent rework that started in Dragonflight and continues now, it's why it made the game so fun to play, because they took kind of the greatest hits and made it sort of mix and match. You know, all the so-called, like, borrowed power stuff that people had hated from previous expansions and the super streamlined talents, you know, it kind of locked you into very specific things all the time. And now it's like, well, you can kind of pick and choose what capstone talents you think are cool or that fit whatever content you're trying to do. And then, you know, when you add the hero talent layer on top of that with this expansion, it just opens up the classes so much in a way that they really haven't been in many years, many expansions, and maybe ever, really, when you think about how you can mix and match stuff now.
No, it's been a lot of fun. I'll just real quick say, like, this, I didn't touch on the story in this call because I don't want to spoil anything, but like, I loved the story. I think that the one thing that nobody's talking about is the props to the story team for the efficiency with which, you know, the hardest thing that storytellers have to do is hit the notes they want to hit in a like decent time. You know, the beats, the pace and everything, while not asking you to spend 3,500 hours on the story. I think they just nailed it. And like, I fucking got emotional at like 2 or 3 moments of the story. And I don't care about these characters. I have no history with these characters. And as someone who knew virtually nothing of the narrative, I was like, oh, that's hitting me in the feels. Is that the Metzen
effect?
Well, I don't know that it was. I would need to ask Jason real quick. I don't know that it was Metzen. I know Metzen came back a year ago, Jason, but how much influence did he have in reality on this story when they start working on these expansions quite a while before they come out?
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible to say being outside the room, right? But probably not like a whole lot, because all the beats were probably pretty much locked in. You know, Taron Gregory is a guy who really started working a lot more on narrative design. He was in the cinematics department since before it existed, right? And he was, I think he's a guy that's really pushed the narrative in the game a lot recently. I'm sure Chris came in and said, yeah, this is cool, or what if we push this out even farther, or what if we went this way, or whatever. But, you know, I think that team, well, you know, I can't fail to mention that Alex Afrasiabi was the guy in the big chair for a long time, and he's like a known scumbag and a creep, and he was one of the guys that got pushed out in recent years. And I'm sure that emboldened the team to work, you know, better, right? With him out of the picture, I'm sure it was better for those people to deliver good work. And I mean, you know, I don't want to talk out of school too much, but I've had, like, I know Taron personally somewhat, and I mean, I've had conversations with him. And he said, like, one of the reasons why he wanted to move from the cinematics team to narrative design is because Chris retired, right?
Right.
He would never say that he would fill his shoes or whatever, but I mean, Taron was a guy that worked with Chris for many years, going back to the Black Temple trailer, right? That was the first thing that Taron made for Blizzard. And so, you know, I think that, like, you have people telling these stories who care deeply about this universe and these characters and the setting, and, you know, having sort of a mature, mellowed out Chris Metzen back, like, kind of steering the ship, has got to be a big win, I would think. I mean, obviously Chris laid the groundwork, you know. The setting wouldn't be what it is without him.
Yeah.
I would say. I mean, it's a team effort, right? And everybody, there's been a lot of different people that contributed a lot of cool stuff to it in the 30 years it's been around. But without Metzen, what does it look like? And
Yeah.
there's no answer to that question, right? He was one of the real architects. And I think, like, the what they've told us is that, Metzen saw Dragonflight and he was like, this is really cool. I want in on this, and you got to think War Within was kind of in the oven at that point. But so then, to get him in the room and like really polish stuff up and lay out a plan where, okay, we're going to develop these characters and storylines, and we're going to let the audience know that this is going to develop over multiple years and multiple expansions. I mean, they've never done anything like that before. And I don't think they really maybe get there without Chris. And one of the things I felt like was that in his absence, like, nobody wanted to drop Chris's baby, right? And that's why maybe to me, the storytelling sometimes felt like it was kind of treading water, because it's like we're not going to like crack open this whole Azeroth Titan story, because who can approach that? But then when you have Chris there, and if Chris says it's cool, or if he likes it, or he rubber stamps it, or he comes up with a beat, then everybody's emboldened to just do whatever they think is cool with it, right? I think that has to be a huge boon to them in terms of telling stories in this universe.
But I think the next one will be the one that has his fingerprints truly all over it. Whereas, like you say, this one, he's been there, and I'm sure he had some influence. But all the comments are like, "This is all Metzen," and I'm like, "Nah, this one's not all Metzen. The next one will have an even heavier Metzen influence."
I mean, he's always front and center, right? He's still kind of the rock star, and so for better or for worse, like, he gets the credit and the blame for anything attached to it. Even he was getting that in the years that he wasn't really working on the product, and even after he left.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But he's such a public face of Warcraft as an idea. So, I mean, I feel like probably having him back can only be a boon to the team.
All right, guys, look, we'll wrap up the retail chat there. Everyone who was here for that, feel free to just listen in or whatever. We're going to sod Shaman now for that part of the podcast. Jason, mate, it's been an absolute delight. We'll have to get you back soon for the full 3-hour let's talk about the War Within and what it means to us chat soon.
Absolutely, yeah. We'll have to get it on the calendar once we get a chance to play a little season 1.
Definitely. Yeah. A couple of weeks with Mythics will be the time, I reckon. All right, guys, let's rock and roll. Fred, Zim, Gally, you guys ready?
Oh, let's send it.
All right, Let's do it. All right, so we have been talking a little bit of Classic Plus on the show, and as you'll hear in this episode, this is the true smorgasbord of content. We're doing a bit of everything. It's Countdown to Classic, but we're talking about fucking Classic Plus, Season of Discovery, War Within. What is going on with this show? What is going on with me? I'm losing my mind, guys. It's just Warcraft. I can't get enough of it. But look, I thought the other day, wouldn't it be fun if over the next, I don't know, fucking 3-4 months, we had a little bit of time, just a little bit of time, doesn't need to be 3 hours, but just some time with each class, and talked about what our hopes and dreams might be for this class in a Classic Plus. Now, many of you will balk at that and go, Josh, we don't know that they're changing anything with the classes. I want 1.12 classes with just extra content. Stop pushing your fucking narrative and trying to get them to change things. That's not my Classic Plus, man. Look, that may well happen. Classic Plus might come out. Fucking might not come out, but it's more than likely coming out with either no class changes or some class changes. In a world where they don't change the classes at all, there's just fucking nothing to talk about, right? There's no fun, there's no speculation, there's no content. So I prefer to live in the world where I'm just saying that you guys know I've personally said, I've been very public about it, I would like some form of changes to come to the classes in a Classic Plus. My level of changes floats more around the TWOW level of involvement, as opposed to I like the SOD changes as well, but I'm really not that fast. I'll take whatever, but I don't want the 1.12 classes. That's a personal preference, and that's why on my show we'll be discussing with players of the classes what their dream Frankensteinian version of, if they had the wheel, what their class would look like in a Classic Plus. So, with all that being said, let's have a bit of fun. Let's talk to the Shaman today. And of course, if we're going to talk about Shaman, we're going to get the usual suspects. We're going to get people like Fred Munro. My friend, how are you?
Doing well. How are you, man?
Good, man. Zim, mate, what's cracking?
Oh, not much. Just leveling another shaman.
That's the way. I love it. And Galley Boy, my main man, what's going on? We lost Galley Boy. Oh dear, he'll be back. That's all right. All right, we'll start off with you two. And Fred, I'll just say, like, I think it's probably important. We shouldn't just not talk about it, but look, you're allowed to give your opinion. I sit there and I make fun of the people who only want the 1.12 classes. I shouldn't do that. It is purely a personal preference thing. I don't want that. Some people do. But I know you don't want that, Fred, but I want you to sort of give me a concise argument just off the top here as to why you think the 1.12 version of Shaman and Classic Plus wouldn't work for you.
Sure. I mean, I guess the first point, just a very overarching point you have to ask is, why do we care about class balance in WoW, right? Just why do we care at all? Well, if you're a real 1.12 Andy, you might say, well, the classes are actually balanced. Of course, it's a laughable statement. But you might say more reasonably, well, why do I even care? Sure, they're really unbalanced. But hey, why should I care? And I think the answer is that there's this idea, and actually I have a nice clip that I like to throw around of Kevin Jordan saying this, where basically you want people to be able to play the class that they want to play the way they want to play it. You want them to be able to engage in the class fantasy. You want them to actually be able to play their class, right? And if you take, for example, the Paladin in 1.12, and you say, "Oh, you're this defender of the light. You're smiting evildoers with, with power magic." This is a well-known, think about D&D, for example. This Gish class, which does damage, maybe does a little bit of healing, but you're really going out there in your DPS class, for example, and you feel very different than a warrior because you're a Paladin of the, warrior of the light. This sort of thing. If you're doing that for all of 60 levels, that's the class fantasy that you have. That's a class fantasy you get attached to, and then you hit level 60, and they say put on this blue dress and never take it off, and stand in the back and heal. You're going to feel disappointed. You're going to feel cheated. You're going to feel like this was not what I signed up for, and this is not how I want to play the game. And I think ultimately, when you have poor class, the reason that happens is because you have poor class balance. People are really limited in being able to play the game the way they want to play it and feel strong while doing it if there's poor class balance. So, I think it's pretty clear that unless you're healing as a shaman, and if you're talking about, end game raid PvE, there is no room for you. Elemental shaman is really not so great. Enhancement shaman is even worse. So ultimately, if you're someone like me who likes enhancement shaman, you like this sort of battle mage archetype, and you want to play that, that's very difficult to play that and not just be totally trolling your whole raid in a 1.12 world. And then separately, just aside from balance, different than balance is how you actually the actual buttons the class has. How fun it is to play is a different question than whether it's good or not. It's terrible, but it also is not very fun to play, I think, because it doesn't really have that much to do. You place your sticks once every 2 minutes. You press Storm Strike once every 20 seconds, assuming that there's a uncapped debuff limit. If there's an 8 debuff limit or a 16 debuff limit, which are the classic amounts, 18 or rather 16 in the CG patch. You can't press Storm Strike, and you press a Shock once every 5 or 6 seconds, depending if you have a talented. You're really not doing all that much, and so that's why I think significant changes would be needed. And having played the Sod Shaman, it's hard to imagine playing a 1.12 version of Shaman and having any fun with it, or feeling powerful, or really engaged in the class fantasy. Not necessarily a concise answer, but I think that is probably a direct answer.
That's the whole show right there.
Yeah.
All right, you're going to have to follow that one up, Zim. Mate, I'll give you the same question and, dive into the deepest recesses of your personal being as to how you feel about this, Shaman in Classic and everything, and what your hopes and dreams are going forward. But, without sort of knowing, I actually don't know which way you lie on this one, so I don't have to lead you as much as I did Fred. But tell me, the 1.12 version of Shaman, whether it be LE, Enhance, or Resto, really the whole kit and caboodle, tell me why that either does or doesn't work for you in a Classic Plus, in your dream Classic Plus.
Well, if I wanted to go back in time and play a 1.12, I can do that on Arrow. And I did that all of 2019. I like all the way through Nax, I played a Resto Shaman because that was the only viable option. That, all Shamans provide utility to a raid. However, the only one that's actually doing anything, is the Resto Shaman. And that's why there's a running joke, Chain Hill Go Burr. Like if you're playing Enhance, you're doing PvP. If you're playing Elemental, you're doing PvP. And that's it. Unless you have some really solid, relaxed raid team homies that bring you along as an Elemental or an Enhance, it's just not viable to play. Yeah, you can go out and solo stuff as much as you want. That's fine. You can PvP. You're doing a hell of a job. Good job. But if you want to contribute to a group at any point, you drop your sticks, as Fred said, and you press chain heal, and that's it. It's just not a fun play style. Like it's just in one button rotations on nonstop.
I missed the first question, but I'm going to jump in and say that's actually what I was expecting and kind of hoping for SOD. Like I went into SOD before SOD was announced. I told myself the next fresh, I'm playing a Shaman and I'm healing. Okay. I'm doing one of those two things now. What I wanted to do was fucking twist totems and press chain heal. And I did not get that, but I'm okay with it.
All right. Gally, mate, good to hear from you. I think I might have thrown to you when you were in the toilet or something before, but mate, yeah, the question was just basically throwing it out there to these guys, which you've half answered there. Just tell me why the 1.12 version of Shaman either does or doesn't work for you in your dream Classic Plus.
In Classic Plus, I don't think it would work. Kind of what was mentioned, like if you're 1.12ing, you are playing Resto and you're going to like it unless you have friends that will bring you along, right? That's just the state of how we do it. Now, my raid team, in 2019 Classic had the Ret Paladin, had the Shadow Priest. We had everything, right? And we cleared stuff, but obviously that was probably the uncommon approach. So, yeah, I think SOD Shaman's in a great spot, personally, for any kind of Classic Plus.
All right, guys, what we'll do, and like I said, we're not going to spend we probably won't spend 2 hours on this. It'll be closer to an hour. But what I wanted to do is just rip through the trees and just get all of your takes on, what you think each spec needs, because it sounds like you're all on board with changes in Classic Plus. You want your class to not be 1.12. You want to add something, and it'll be interesting to hear where you guys disagree with each other in terms of how far to go with the changes in your dream Classic Plus. What I've got up is, you guys know what SOD did. I've got the Turtle WoW changes up, and I'm just going to run a bunch of stuff by you and have you guys talk amongst yourselves, and it's always fun having the three of you go back and forth on what you think what works and what doesn't work for Shaman. Fred, we look, obviously all of you guys like Enhance and it's good that Galley Boy's here to discuss Resto as well. We always struggle for Ellie, but we'll do our best, guys. Someone reached out to me via DMs going, Josh, it sucks that you never have Elemental Shaman on the podcast, and I'm sorry we don't get every spec all the time. It breaks my heart, but the guys will absolutely do their best. Don't you worry about that. But we might as well start with our strength in Enhance and just say, look, Fred, well, it doesn't have to be Fred. Anyone, jump in. Let's start with the elephant in the room that is Stormstrike. You guys have already discussed it just now in the opening salvo. We know what SOD did with the ability. We know what Retail did with the ability, making it much more part of a frequent rotation, things like 6-second cooldowns and whatnot. Retail, I believe, uses it to sort of get empowered and stuff like that. In Turtle WoW, they went down the path of Stormstrike has 2 ranks. At rank 2, you get at level 60, and that just makes the cooldown 12 seconds instead of 20. So 20 seconds in 1.12, 12 seconds in TWoW. I think it's 6 seconds in SOD. Is that right, guys?
Yeah, it's 6 seconds.
6 seconds in SOD, and TWoW just made it do 12% of your base mana. First in, best dressed, guys. And riddle me this. What is the correct cooldown for Storm Strike?
6 seconds.
Agreed for sure.
Next
look at all the other
question.
abilities. If we're applying the 6-second Storm Strike to 1.12, like what other button are you going to press every 6 seconds? A shock? It's just, let me press the same button over and over and over. So if we can't get more buttons to press, at least let me press that same button over and over.
Well, I mean, let's get wild. I mean, literally, like you guys are designing your own MMO right now. I want you to picture like we are the guys making, like, let's almost pretend Vanilla WoW didn't exist or whatever. Like we're making an MMO, the four of us right now. Fucking Ubiquitous is in charge and he's thrown us in the Shaman room and said, Oi, all you idiot Shaman, make a Shaman class. And we're like, oh, fuck, all right, we've got to put our heads together here, guys. We can do whatever the fuck we want. So you say, like, you know, what would you do? Why couldn't you, and I'm not saying this is the right call, I'm just trying to get you guys brainstorming. Why couldn't you make Stormstrike a longer cooldown than 6, but less than 20, and unlock all the shocks? Like now, Flame Shock, like the Tank Shaman can do in SOD, we separate them and go, well, you can now Flame Shock, Earth Shock, Frost Shock separately of each other, and Storm Strikes every 12 seconds. Does that work or not for you?
Maybe I'll jump in first here. I would say that is removing complexity from the Shaman, right? Because the fact that you have 3 shocks which have shared cooldowns, it gives you a decision point and something to think about, right? I'm thinking especially PvP here, but it's a real decision whether I want to flame shock that rogue who might stealth, or I want to frost shock someone from range, or I want to interrupt that spell from range. The decision point there, if you're removing that, I think is poor. So that's why I wouldn't do that specific idea of unlocking the shocks. The question of Storm Strike, I mean, I think in the way that SOD Shaman is set up, which is also just Wrath Shaman minus Fire Nova Totem, you have, because it's a GCD-based game, when you have a 6-second cooldown on an ability, that means you can use it once every 4 GCDs, because 1.5 times 4 is 6. And so you have a really nice rotation where you get to Storm Strike, you get to Earth Shock, you get to Lawful Ash, and you have 1 free GCD. And because you have this Maelstrom procs, you end up building this and you use the Lightning Bolts, and then this Maelstrom proc sort of has this priority system where it takes priority over other things. And then, hey, actually only having 1 spare GCD every, 4 GCDs maybe isn't enough. Sometimes you have to forego the Shock or forego the Lava Ash because you need your totems down, you need to refresh your Lightning Shields, you need to Purge, something like that. And so ultimately by having Stormstrike on a low GCD, but also low cooldown rather, and having a GCD-based game with a low cooldown Stormstrike that is impactful and something you want to press, it's constantly making a decision in your mind about whether you want to do this or you want to do something else. It gives you a lot of agency in how you play the class. And so that's something that I really enjoy personally. I mean, if you want to play a class where you just press one button, you press Frostbolt all day, obviously you might disagree with me and saying, no, all these decisions are overwhelming me and I don't want to make hard choices about my GCs and what I do. But that personally is gameplay I enjoy, and I, generally Wrath Shaman is beloved, so I don't think I'm giving an unpopular take here. But so that's why I wouldn't unlock the shocks, and why I would keep Stormstrike at a generally low GCD or cooldown rather, so that it functions in this 4 GCD rotation, which I think works very well.
Hey Zim, you know the idiom "there's no bad ideas in a brainstorm"?
Oh yeah,
yeah. Fred just fucking obliterated that. Oh my god, I feel horrible for even bringing it up now. He's so right. Gally, were you nodding your head? You and Zim nodding your head along to that one?
I mean, I think in theory that's kind of cool, right? Masters of the Elements. But on paper, I don't think it would work, probably.
I mean, I really appreciate Fred's point of view. And I mean that. Because, as a player, you're supposed to think about what you're doing. Like, I'm not going to sit there and just, wait for Storm Strike every single time. I may not Earth Strike every single time, especially if I'm facing like an Earth Elemental, or I'm not going to Flame Shock if it's a Fire Elemental. Some type of thought goes into what you're pressing. And that keeps the game interesting. However, most of the time, you're not fighting an Elemental. You're fighting, whatever type of mob you're fighting. Usually humanoids or, beasts or something, whatever. But I mean, my hot take is to, like, all of this is to throw Maelstrom in there somewhere and to make dual wield and two-handed weapons trained at your trainer instead of having to be in a wasted talent in your talent tree.
All right. Slow down, cowboy. You've just raised the next big question. I think you've answered it. Well, I'll get you to elaborate why, and then I'll get the others to piggyback. The question was going to be, is Maelstrom mandatory for you in a Classic Plus? Zim, you've said yes. Why?
It allows you to use like 2 more of your abilities, man. Like the first ability you have as a shaman is Lightning Bolt. If you go the entire rest of your class not using it, it seems like, all right, that was kind of nice for levels 1 through 10, you know. And it gives you another button to press. It's like, why not? Like, you see, it's like one of the shaman's only procs they actually get. Why not? You know.
Gally, same question. Is Maelstrom mandatory? Why or why not?
Yes, it is fun, especially if weaving is a thing.
Okay, fun should win at the end of the day. Fred, I'm almost scared to ask. Is Maelstrom mandatory?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, unless there's some other mechanic added which changes the rotation. Maelstrom is the thing that spices up your rotation, actually makes you have to react to it, right? If you didn't have Maelstrom, you do Storm Strike, Earthshock, Lava Lash, Jet's dead GCD, Storm Strike, Earthshock, Lava Lash, dead GCD. There'd be nothing to think about, right? You could set a 1-button rotation macro that just is a cast sequence and cast those 3 in that order, and there'd be nothing to think about, right? But the fact that you have Maelstrom pop up, which in itself is a decision point about whether you want to heal with it or you want to damage with it, that also like kind of interjects itself in front of the other things in the rotation. It can mess the rotation up and change it and make it dynamic. And so it's sort of as the rotation is currently set, it's what adds dynamism to it and makes it fun, in my opinion. But I mean, if they were to throw some totally different proc system in, then you wouldn't need Maelstrom Weapon, but you need something filling that role that Maelstrom Weapon is filling for sure.
Let me throw some stuff at you. These are all the changes that Turtle WoW made to Enhancement Shaman. There's a few. Just let me rip through them. And I want you guys to just listen in intently and comment on what you think they did with the class or with the spec. It does seem like they went a bit more, you can kind of play the tank if you want, but really did not much else for Enhance, which will probably rub you guys the wrong way. But here we go, listen up. So as I said, they made Storm Strike a 12-second cooldown. They gave you what you just mentioned there, Zim, in terms of two-handed weapons are learned on character creation instead of being acquired from the talent tree. Parry is learnable from level 6 from your class trainer instead of being in the talent tree. They gave you a new ability called Thunderhead that allows your lightning shield to be cast on allies and made it 20% cheaper to cast. They moved Storm Strike from row 7 to row 5 of the talent tree. They gave you Bloodlust. They gave you something new called Spirit Armor, which increased your armor from shields by up to 30% through talents, which, like I said, they try to lean into the tank thing a little bit there. And they gave you, as well on the tank thing, Toughness and Anticipation combined into one talent in the third row, which increased your armor value from items by up to 10% and your dodge chance by up to 5%. So they sort of made the 1.12 Shaman enhanced thing a bit more tanky without actually giving them new tank abilities. They just reconfigured the talents. From everything you just heard there, tell me why, like, when you hear that, does that make you keen to play like the T-WoW enhanced Shaman or not at all?
No.
Honestly, yeah, I'd play it, but it's not what I want in a Classic Plus.
Okay, why?
I don't think that, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I don't think Bloodlust should be part of Classic Plus.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think that's just, I just don't think it feels like, it's a great button to press and everybody loves it. Yeah, all this damage. Yeah. But I'd rather think about mechanics and actually lean on other players. Instead of Bloodlust, I had an idea. Make it Way of Earth. Make that a talent.
Okay. Gally, what do you think about that? You feel the same way about Bloodlust?
Agreed. Real quick for the Turtle WoW, do you know if they did Storm Strike how it is in 1.12, or if it's like SOD where it's
I-
like a duration instead of like the hits.
I think
you
it's
know?
exactly the same as 1.12, and they just changed it to a 6-second cooldown. Oh, sorry, 12 seconds. 12 seconds. My bad.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, not. I really like SOD enhancement. I think it feels great personally, and I didn't play much Shaman up until this point. So I'm almost coming at it from like a new Shaman experience, and I think it feels great. And I'm also, the two-hand advocate, and so I'm kind of playing it, not the main way.
All right, there you go. Fred, as Gally tells us, he likes to double fist it, mate. What are your thoughts on Bloodlust?
Yeah, on Bloodlust, really not a fan of it. I think I've discussed with you my issues with the Turtle WoW Shaman, but specifically on Bloodlust, I mean, it's a capstone talent. Just to be clear to all the listeners here, this Bloodlust is a single target Bloodlust. It's not party wide or raid wide. So if you're thinking about TPC or Wrath Bloodlust, it's actually not that. It's you choose a single guy and you increases. It's one single target Bloodlust.
Oh, yeah, sorry, I missed that. You're right. It's just castable on one person.
So it's like PI?
It's like
basically.
an unholy frenzy from
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, that's really important. Does that actually change your mind, Gally and Zim?
No.
I not really, I guess. I don't know.
I think it makes it even worse.
Yeah, why, Stan?
It just turns Shaman into like even more of a support class where your personal like contribution is even more minimized because it basically guaranteed that you're not using that on yourself. You're just using that on whatever warrior rogue is deemed necessary to get it in that raid.
Stealing my points, man.
Oh yeah.
Fred, you're nodding along. Sorry, Yubi, go for it.
I've never enjoyed any of those single target here. I'll rub your dick, and you can say that I'm a mad dog for doing it. Cooldowns like PI, Unholy, whatever the fuck it was in Wrath, and single target Bloodlust could all get fucked.
Yeah, I personally, can I just say, some people will like it. I personally hated getting whispered all the time for PIs and like the jockeying that people do within the guild for I should get it, no, I should get it. Like I'm just not a fan.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than listening to your mage go like, "Oh, I would have 99 if I got the PI."
Yeah. Oh, you missed it by 1.5 seconds. Like, fuck off, cunt. Like, I don't know. Fuck.
Yeah, so I don't like them.
Just to be sure, you also did not mention another ability which they got, which is they can cast their lightning shield on the tank as well in Turtle WoW.
Yes. No. I said they can cast that on other people. I mentioned that. Yep.
So, but yes, I mean this goes to the point, which is what Turtle WoW's done is they said we're going to make Enhancement Shaman a dedicated support class. I think just on a conceptual level, that to me that's kind of mind-boggling because if I wanted to play a support Shaman, I would have played Resto. Right? The reason I pick Enhanced Shaman is not because I want to support other people. So making my Capstone talent a support talent, making my Lightning Shield a support talent. By the way, in vanilla, you can't even cast spells on other people as a Shaman. They added 2 of them. It's just, I think, thematically wrong. And then from a gameplay perspective, it doesn't actually do anything for me. Because again, the issues are you have a Storm Strike every 20 seconds and a Shock every 6 seconds and no buttons to press. Okay, they've made Storm Strike every 12 seconds. You still have no buttons to press. You're still doing no damage. But now you're able to cast Lightning Shield on your tank, and you're able to cast your Capstone talent that you spent all those points on. You're able to cast on someone else, on that warrior. Like, great. I think it's terrible.
Let me push you a little bit on that one, Fred, just because I don't necessarily believe this all that much, but I know there will be some listeners probably jumping up and down at something you just said in terms of support. When you say you don't play Enhanced to support, like that's for other specs, couldn't you make the argument that realistically the Shaman and the Paladin class, particularly in like a classic themed environment, just those classes in and of themselves, no matter what spec you pick, are inherently support classes. And whilst, we've got the Holy Trinity, we don't have the fucking the quad here. It's not DPS, heals, tank and support. It's just DPS, tank and heals. But these 2 classes sort of created the 4th role, which is support. And like, particularly in PvP, I think of like Ret, Holy, or Prot, even though no one plays Prot in PvP, you know what I mean? They are kind of like you're expected to support. Shaman, no matter what you're doing in a battleground or a fucking dungeon or whatever, you're kind of expected to support. So it's interesting to hear you say that you think one of the specs should be a little bit more selfish in that regard. Like, what do you say to people who are like, mate, you're playing a support class. One of the specs should not be selfish.
Enhancement Shaman is only a support class because its damage sucks. It's a circular argument. Moreover, I think the sorts of people who say this tend to gloss over the fact that the non-support classes, whatever they are, which arguably is just warrior, in fact have a huge amount of utility. It's sort of a saying, well, shamans have utility, so therefore they're support, but they are totally forgetting that these other classes bring huge utility. For example, assuming you don't have an IEA rogue, Sunder Armor is a bigger DPS increase to your raid than Wind Fury weapon is, right? Think about Shaman, Wind Fury Totem. Sunder Armor does more for you than Wind Fury Totem in Classic 1.12. You know, and then Warriors also have Battle Shout, which is a significantly better buff to your party than Grace of Air Totem plus Strength of the Earth Totem. Battle Shout is more than both of those combined, especially for rogues, but also for Warriors. You know, and then they also have Thunderclap and Demo Shout, right? The fact of the matter is people get all, you know, hung up on, oh, shamans have so much utility, but then they pretend that warriors don't have utility when warriors, you know, I think, again, if we're ignoring IEA Rogue, and IEA does not stack with Sunder Armor, which is why I'm ignoring for these purposes, has more utility than Shaman. Yet no one would ever call Warrior support class. Why? Because they're doing that much damage. So it's a totally circular argument to say, well, Shaman's a support class. They're a support class because they don't have more damage. Give them the damage equal to a warrior, and they're no longer a support class. And that's, you know, so that whole argument to me is very silly.
I can hear the vein popping out of his forehead, and I fucking love it. Zim, Gally, let me keep you going on this one. If I'm the evil classic dev going, wahahaha, all shaman specs are going to be support specs in Classic Plus. That is your role in this game forever. Do you agree or disagree with that notion? Are you with Fred, or do you think that Shaman should be like gimped a little bit to be support in all specs?
I don't think any class should be gimped to be support in all specs. I think each class should have a viable option to be a little bit selfish. And I think Shamans is either enhance or elemental. If you want to be support, be a healer, or just be a straight, like, you know, bring all of the utility you want, but utility does not equal support right off the bat, right? And just as Fred said, I do agree, like, it's a circular argument. Like, if Shamans were number one DPS over Warriors, then they wouldn't be looked at as, you know, a support class. They'd be a standalone DPS that brings some great ass totems to the raid.
Gally?
I love the utility rule personally. I'm totally okay being a buff bot, a buff bitch. Like, I'm cool with it, but I also want to have buttons to press in the meantime. So for example, if we had the exact same rotation as we did now, but we did half as much damage, I'd be totally cool with it, honestly.
That's where, like, I agree with Fred entirely. It's how I've always seen it. You're not even that good of a buff bot. Like, Battle Shout is more important than your fucking totem for me. And Warriors just bring that and press it, and they don't have to sacrifice anything to give it to me. Like, the buff bot concept of a fucking enhancement shaman is that you're not even that good of a buff bot. So that's why you shouldn't have to do bad damage. It's not like you actually make everyone do 50% more DPS. You just add a couple hundred more, just like anyone else's debuff that they bring. But for some reason, we just put Shaman in this boat of like, nah, he dropped some sticks on the floor, dude. He can't press buttons or do damage.
Well, keep in mind, we initially were the only Wind Fury givers, so that is...
Yeah, but like,
that's changed, but
you can be the only
massive.
Wind Fury giver, but like, Wind Fury is overstated in its genuine fucking DPS output. It makes Warriors feel a lot better to play and do more damage because of rage and shit. But like, to a rogue, like, Wind Fury is big, but it's not like you actually make me do 30% more damage because you give me Wind Fury.
If we're talking about 1.12, everybody's playing rogues and warriors, mostly warriors. So Wind Fury is like the main reason why any type of shaman be getting an invite to a group, if anything. Unless it's like you're in AQ and they need Nature Res Totem or Poison Cleanse Totem, whatever, you know. Just situation specific, you know, totems is what people invite shamans for.
Guys, let me ask you about some of the other things that TWoW introduced and whether or not you would give a thumbs up or a thumbs down to this in your Classic Plus. They introduced the concept of Shaman racials. So, like, priests have their racials. Now they're saying Shaman, you can have your racials. Orcs got Feral Spirit. Tauren got Spirit Link. Trolls got Hex. How do you guys feel about that as a concept? Do you get intrigued by that or do you poo-poo it?
I think it's interesting, but at the end of the day, if you're trying to do the most damage, you're going to lean to the one that does the most damage. Hex doesn't do shit for you. So there's that.
Well, they've gone, one sort of damage, one for resto and one for PvP. Or, I mean, you could say Ellie works with Hex as well. Yeah.
I gotcha. I still think if we're still on the topic of enhancement, then you're going for the damage. Obviously, well, there's one for each spec, as you said. I think it's interesting concept but I don't think it's very applicable, and I don't think it would be, it wouldn't make much of a difference to the Shaman now. If we just implemented those, it was like, whatever. It's not that much utility.
Right. I listen. If it was just implementing these, that's what we're talking about. It's nothing. And the turbo changes generally, I don't think, do much to address the poor state of balance that enhancement Shaman's in. But those ideas, standing on their own, perhaps in a Classic Plus environment based upon Sod Shaman, I do like those. I do like RP. Like, I really like leaning into the RP elements of WoW. I think that's one of its strengths. And these are abilities from Warcraft 3. Spirit Link is from the Spirit Walkers, in Warcraft 3. Feral Spirits from the Farseer, Warcraft 3 Orc. And Hex from the Shadowhunter, obviously. So I really do like that they're leaning into these racials and these abilities like that. I know that Ubiquitous had his survey, and I was one of the few that said I want racials to be the most, impactful. That was not a very popular position, so I recognize maybe that I don't have a popular position here. But
have you done a bit of self-reflection since then?
But I do like. Well, I don't know if I was really pushing that. Oh, everyone believes like this. I think which is what maybe Ubiquitous was meant to capture, is that there's people who have unpopular positions who are shocked by it. I'm not necessarily shocked by it, but I do like leaning into the RP elements. And so I see Turtle WoW. You have to keep in mind, is an RP server. It's an RP PvE server. And so insofar as they're doing stuff to lean into RP elements, I like that, and so I do like these additions.
Yubi, can you just tell us the funniest DM you've received in the week since we've looked at the results?
Oh, it's all just I can't quote them. It's on my fucking Reddit, and I'm not going to go back there. It's just people. Some people have DM'd me with along the lines of, just you wait and see, filter it by the vanilla only votes, and then you'll really see what Classic is supposed to be like. And I'm sorry guys, spoilers, the votes barely fucking change. Like, it's just a little bit more 1.12 leaning, but like, if something was 80-20 overall, when you filter by the error votes alone, it becomes like 70-30 instead. Like, it's not like it flips it on its head. But yeah, just gotten a few of those ones where the survey's full of shit, you didn't ask the right people, and if you just check vanilla voters, we know what's best.
Yeah. Guys, back to the Shaman. Let's see here. Here's an interesting one. Totemic Recall, mandatory or not for a Classic Plus?
Not mandatory.
Okay.
I think either recall or what they did in SOD with the projection. Projection would be much better, especially for your range shaman. They could throw their totems into melee range to get more coverage on them.
Okay, maybe here's a better way to say it. How upset on a scale of 1 to 10 would you be, with 10 being very upset and 1 being not fussed at all, if they just kept the totem system as it is in Classic Plus, as it is in 1.12?
I would not be upset about it. I mean, it's know your class. Oh, I'm going to leave totems behind. Maybe I should, drop new ones or not let that Pat walk into them. I don't know.
Okay.
It's being aware of your surroundings.
Right. So you'd be a 1 on the scale?
Yeah.
All right. Gally, where are you on the scale of 1 to 10 from not fussed to very fussed?
I'd probably go 5 or 6. I think projection or recall would be very welcomed. I really like projection, to be honest, compared to recall dropping all forward at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Fred?
Yeah, I'd be like a 2 or a 3. I wouldn't be, throwing my computer out the window, but I would be very confused because it seems like it's such an easy thing to do. Why not do it? That would be my reaction. But I would not be that fussed, I guess. It doesn't make a huge impact on me.
Same question. More shields, water shield, earth shield. On a scale of 1 to 10, how fussed would you be if they are in or out? So let's say, that's a shit way of it. Let's just say, do you feel like they're mandatory, water shield and earth shield?
Yes.
I think that they would be very welcomed. I don't think they're mandatory, especially if you're playing Resto. Like, you should have all of the shields because you are the support class.
Yeah, it's a good way of rounding out each of the specs.
Alrighty. Guys, we'll just finish up on... I'll just say, well, interestingly, Turtle WoW didn't seem to change anything with Resto Shaman. Do you think that would be a mistake for your Classic Plus? Like, you see things like what Sod did with Riptide and, some of the way that we obviously just had a change to the way that, like, Flame Shock interacted with Resto and everything, but they dabbled with that for a second. Do you think not changing 1.12 healing is a mistake?
I think it depends on the raid sizes they go with. For 20-man raids, it makes sense to give Shaman more tools for healing because they may end up being like the main tank healer. So you would need some additional utility in order to make that work a little bit better. But if they kept it as 40-man, then Shaman could pretty comfortably sit in their role as a raid healer, just spamming chain heal and keeping Earth Shield on the tank or whatnot.
Gally, you're the healer. What are your thoughts on Resto and your Classic Plus?
I was healing. I've been playing Enhanced for the past 3 phases, I think.
Right.
But I think that's a good take. I think depending on raid size, that would probably make the difference. I mean, Riptide is obviously one of the best buttons to press, right? Like that's a good one. So even if it's Chain Heal and Riptide, I don't think people would be too mad about that.
No, if they just gave me Riptide, I'd be happy. Personally, for me, it's mandatory. But like you say, if that's all they gave Resto Shaman, I'd be happy. Anyone
Probably
else?
worth noting.
Yeah.
I don't play Resto Shaman, so I would definitely defer to Resto Shaman enjoyers whether they like the SOD version. I don't even know how the SOD version differs from vanilla. Though I would be curious if there's any Turtle WoW players, in the chat, because you had said they did not change Resto Shaman and Turtle WoW. I would suspect that's false. I would imagine that every Resto Shaman is required to put 31 points in the enhancement tree for Bloodlust. So that would be a pretty major change to how Turtle WoW Resto Shaman plays.
Of course.
It seems to me like that's a pretty big difference actually about how it plays. You throw away a bunch of talents.
Well, it's not 31
that's
points. I think they put Lust in the 5th row. Did they? Let me check.
No,
Yes.
It
is Capstone.
Yeah.
You're right.
I mean, it just sounds like you'd have to bring more shamans to a raid.
Yeah.
I will say, real quick, from the Resto Shaman in my guild, I think one of the big complaints has been like the fact that you're kind of pigeonholed into like doing these weird like hybrid things where you're, at one point it was you're going in melee range because that gave you more healing power or something funky like that. And I've also heard that from the Ellie Shaman. Particularly, we had an Ellie Shaman quit because they were like, I don't want to do that shit. I want to stand in the back and press my buttons. That might have changed now that we're at 60 and stuff.
3 weeks of phase 3. So
Yeah.
that was a small match.
Yeah.
So I definitely think some people do not like that. Some people really just want to stand in the back, press their chain heal, press their chain lightning, and chill. So just something to keep in mind.
Guys,
I will say though that Heal Hance was probably some of the most fun I've had in SOD.
Well, I was just about to go down that angle. Let me keep you rolling because I was going to say, how do you guys feel about healing in Classic Plus in general? And we can talk about sort of the Shaman specifically, but this is more of a general healing thing. Like, I'm an asshole. I love the option of doing damage on a healer. I'm sorry, guys. I'm very I say I'm sorry, and then I was going to say I'm unapologetic about it, but I just adore it. I adore it. I love being able to not necessarily pump, but contribute in some matter should I see fit as a healer, whether that's via free wraths as a druid, or whether you don't make it free and make the ability cost a little something, but it's not punitive to throw in a lightning bolt or a flame shock or something. I really like that. I want to know how you guys feel about that. Would you want to see a situation where a resto shaman could weave in a lightning bolt or here and there without having their mana bar pumped, or no, healers should heal?
I liked the power surge in Nomer, because I think they've changed it many times. So that was your flame shock had a chance to be a chain lightning or a chain heal instant. I think that is honestly perfect. And what's crazy is that so many resto shamans just never press flame shock because you go in and look at your parses and it's like, oh yeah, I tossed a flame shock a couple times, and you're purple parsing because there are so many that just don't do it.
Yeah.
Heck, in Nomer, when I was doing healing on my second shaman, I would just cast flame or rank 1 flame shock just for the power surge.
Mm. Oh yeah, that's what I did. Yeah. Stan, do you think healers should heal, or it's fun and cool to be able to do a tiny bit of damage here and there?
The tough part is balancing it, though, because the more ability you give to healers to do damage, the more it screws up PvP.
100%, yeah.
Because that's why Shaman were so out of control, I guess, in Phase 2 and going into Phase 3, was they could do, like, good to great damage while also instant healing their entire health bar. So I don't know how to balance that to make it work so that you can do a decent amount of damage in the raid and not be incredibly overpowered in PvP. But
I'm a big fan.
This is just me.
This is just me. I'm a big fan of just, I don't know whether this, giving the healers something to cast as damage in a raid, but it's just saying this flat out, this ability doesn't work on a player or some shit like that. That never bothered me in the past, but that's just me.
No, and I know that Blizzard in the past has talked about staying away from, at least for the longest time in the retail version of the game, not balancing stuff differently for PvE and PvP, because they want the same abilities to work, always not be confusing to players at all. But I fully agree with you. Like, if that's what needs to happen to make it work so you feel good in both, then why not?
Guys, we'll jump off. I'll just, we're a bit all over the place, but that's my fault. I'll run us back to enhancement. I just want to ask you, looking at the talent tree, the specific things that you might want to get in there and do some damage with. I mean, I look at something like, to give you an example, I look at something like Ancestral Knowledge and just say, that's step one for me for the retooling, is that's got to be buffed, in my opinion. That should be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10%, not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5%. I just think it's such a nothing shit talent, and I don't know if people want to make the argument that, oh, Josh, you need the shit talent sometimes. No, I think they should all be good and make the hard choices. But what are the talents that you enhanced enjoyers would be looking at to retool for your Classic Plus?
I think it depends. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead, man.
I mean, are we considering a system in which there's a ruin system as well, like there is in SOD? Because otherwise, you kind of need to slot all the Wrath talents into the vanilla talent tree.
Yeah, it's tough, isn't it? System. Yeah, let's presume no runes.
Yeah, I actually had done this prior to SOD up, just because I was thinking, it'd be interesting to see if I could create this tree with the Wrath talents, but capping at 31. So I have a terrible PNG, if you're curious to see it, which does this. But I thought
it'd be throw it in the if you've got it, throw it in the Discord chat, and I'll bring it up while you're talking.
Sure. Let me. Well, maybe someone else should go, and I'll just grab it from my computer here.
All
so
right,
I don't know exactly.
Goes in.
Yeah, I think we touched on at least two of them earlier. Looking at parry and looking at two-handed axes and maces, that should be trainable at either passives right off the bat or at the trainer. And then one thing I'd like to see is a little bit reworking, as you mentioned, Ancestral Knowledge. I think it should be 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Then they could do more with Guardian Totems and then I don't really care about Ghost Wolf. It's nice to have, but I think improved Lightning Shield. I'd like to see it. They could tweak it to be like, yeah, increases damage done by your Lightning Shield, but also has a a proc chance to damage whatever you're attacking, which I think would be a nice little twist on it, as we've seen in Sod. So just a few things, and then I think to replace two-handed axes and maces, I think you could move pretty much everything up one level, and I think you can have the capstone talent be either Way of Earth, like I mentioned, if they really want to like incorporate the tanking shaman, which was the original plan for it back in the day. But if we're focusing strictly on damage, then I think Storm Strike or maybe an improved Lava Lash or something like that.
Fred's just sent me the PNG. Fred, I'm liking what I'm seeing. You'll have to explain this this all to us. I'm at face value. I'm seeing what looks like a great little vanilla TBC Wrath hybrid here. Talk us through it.
Yeah, so I mean, it is a hybrid here. The red box indicates that it's a shared talent point, so I'd be combining those. But you can see it's basically all the Wrath talents minus dual wielding talents and certain Storm Strike enhancing talents that happen in Wrath, and also there's no Spirit Wolves. But the capstone talent is Sham Rage. But yeah, so the way
what does your ideal Sham Rage do there as the capstone?
I was just thinking the TBC Sham Rage, which is different than how it exists in Saw. You actually have to attack to get it, and it is perhaps the biggest thing is it's enhancement locked and not so there would no be Sham Raging enhancements, or rather elementals and restos would just be enhancements doing.
I like the TBC one, yeah.
But I think it's really thematic because you're playing this battle mage, and it's like, okay, well, you get this talent that actually forces you to be in the thick of it and attacking in order to generate, the mana. But I think the way I designed this, and I don't know if this is correct or not, was to make it so you actually had to make tough decisions based upon how you want to build your enhancement shaman, right? So you could see, for example, if you want to go with a more physical route, which is the second tier, then you might be foregoing, the static shock on hit, and then you want more physical damage, which is the symbol from vanilla, or you're foregoing, the shaman symbol, which is mental dexterity, the one from Wrath, which gives you attack power from intellect. And then maybe you go Storm Strike, you want, Unleash Fury or something. Well, then you're foregoing Maelstrom Weapon, which is on the right side, and also Mental Dexterity. So you can see I sort of organized it where the right side is like the spell stuff, Mana, Lightning Shield, Static Shock, into AP, AP to Spell Power, Maelstrom Weapon, and then the second row is, the physical stuff. Crit Chance, Flurry, an extra bonus attack, bonus damage, Storm Strike. When you attack, you do your Battle Shout, right? And so that's how I've sort of organized it there. And it would be like a real decision point because, I mean, you could put all your talent points in here. You could go 40 points in, but if you want to go 31 in here, you would in fact be giving up some of the stuff you haven't sought. Just for example. But I don't know how people feel about talents which are impactful and you actually have to give stuff up, or if or people just generally like talent trees where you do just get everything you want. I don't know.
I'd like to just, not a big tangent, but Josh, this is looking awfully decisive, almost like a War Within talent tree. And I say that approvingly. Like, what Fred just said is what the War Within trees are very much like. Like, you can pick a row and get Wind Fury weapons, or you can pick the other row and get Lava Lash. And you're there going, do I want to be a fucking Lava bot, or do I want to be a Wind Fury bot?
Yeah.
Like that. And that's where I'd like Classic Plus to actually go, is, really... You're almost getting fucking spells every second row, and you're building your hero with your talents that way.
I'm a huge fan of the War Within talent trees. Absolutely, like I've
have
been...
you had a look at all, Fred, at them?
Retail? No, I have not looked at.
I just dropped a picture in.
You should give you should just, for shits and giggles for yourself,
just build
you should
something.
Just check out like the enhancement Shaman War Within talent calculator, and it's very similar to like what you've just made yourself.
That's interesting. Yeah,
it's really cool, and you will read it and go, "Fuck, there's some good choices here," but you can't go all of them because then you'll just be a shit version of 4 different kinds of shaman.
Right, but I do think that's an interesting question, which is does the classic enjoy the classic player? Do they actually want to make those tough decisions? And that's not something I could say for sure. Like perhaps most people do want talent trees which are cookie cutter, and you get the stuff you want, you get the stuff you expect. You don't have to give up certain stuff. I don't know how it goes.
I think people Google enhancement shaman bis talents and don't even read it and plug it in.
Yeah, but then even when they're Googling that and doing that, knowing that they've got the ability to change up their play style should they choose, I think is fun. Like I said, I've been really enjoying that. Like, yeah, I can do the BIS build in the War Within, but at any moment, if I wake up the next day and feel like mucking around, I can have 3 different builds of my same spec that plays so differently.
Yeah, whereas in the vanilla tree, your option is, oh, I want to mix it up today. I guess I won't have 5% parry. I'll have 10% more armor. Wow. Feel that. How exciting.
Listen to
your
this
two
guy
best
fucking
options.
shilling for retail. Jesus. Anyway. Boys, what about Zim, Galley, just real quick before we move on to Resto and Elemental. Anything else we need to say about your dream enhanced talent tree?
I mean, they could make improved weapon totems actually work
Mm.
because it's been broken since vanilla, I'm pretty sure. Doesn't actually give the attack power increase on Wind Fury totem.
That
Yeah,
would
but it's
help.
40 attack power on 1 bonus attack every 5 attacks. Even
No,
if
I
it
know, but
works, it does nothing. Anyway.
Asking for the smallest changes.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, go for it, man.
Just add in Maelstrom and call it a day.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, pretty much. All right, guys, let's just quickly, we've kind of done Resto, unless there's something we need to add about Resto before we move on to Ellie. Anything in the Resto tree that must be, like, just keep SOD in mind as well, guys. As I should just sort of said this. Forget Resto for a second, back to Enhance. Is there anything that you've had in SOD with your enhanced Shaman, we've talked about Maelstrom, forget about that now that you've had it, you would struggle to not have it in a Classic Plus? Or is there something in SOD that they absolutely never should have done?
I hate Spirit Wolves.
I also hate Spirit Wolves.
Why does everyone hate Spirit Wolves? I'm the only fucking prick that likes them.
Because we're all PvE Andes and they're a pain in the ass.
Right.
Well, not even that. It's like I enjoy like the little healing bonus you get from them, but at the end of the day, I play a tank shaman, so it's hard for me to even fucking talk about it. Because I use Earth, Wind, and whatever the fuck. But yeah, they're unpredictable. They're just like how homunculi or homunculus were right off the rip. They just go and hit whatever the fuck they want.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter what you're targeting. I thought it used to be like based off of where you're facing. No, they just go and do whatever the fuck they want.
No,
it's a cool concept. I really enjoy it when it works.
The Wrath Wolves shit on the Sod Wolves. Like, the Sod Wolves do leave a little bit to be desired. It's still a fun button to press, but like, if we're talking wolves, you want your Wrath Wolves. I personally, I know you guys don't like pet bars or whatever, but like, again, this always comes down to me being a fucking PvP weirdo, but like, there are a few better feelings than whipping those bad boys out in a PvP fight and having the control of those extra button presses on your pet bar. Bind those 3 abilities and you are laughing in PvP. I fucking had the time of my life for the first 2 months with Wrath with those wolves.
I think this sort of relates to, it's actually PvP reasons why I don't like them, which is, to me, it's so antithetical to Vanilla's Shaman's design, which is they're the only class in the game in 1.12, and not to say I think 1.12 made good decisions, but they are the only class in the game that has no hard CC whatsoever. And so Spirit Wolves being an on-demand stun all of a sudden sort of homogenizes that. I would have much preferred if Shamans got their strength in PvP from a button that wasn't cooldown based. Because like Shamans also didn't really have any big cooldown buttons to press in PvP either. That's just not what the class is about. Your big cooldown button is a 15-second cooldown grounding totem. Like, that's not really a big cooldown button. Whereas other classes, rogues, warriors, paladins, I think maybe every class, so I'd have to think about it, has some sort of, maybe not hunters, have some big cooldown button they press, and that's how they PvP. And so by giving Shaman's Wolves, you've kind of homogenized them. You made them a class with a stun, and you made them a class where, okay, in order to really effectively PvP, I need my 3-minute cooldown Wolves up so that I can stun you and do things to you. So, I would prefer if Shaman was not like that. Shaman was a class where I don't have a stun, and so I actually have to really think about how I'm going to beat you, and then I have strength otherwise. It's hard to imagine a phase 4 enhancement Shaman without Spirit Wolves, because I don't think they're particularly strong with them, and Spirit Wolves make up a huge portion of their power. So if you're to take that away, you'd have to buff them in other aspects. But I think that not being cooldown based, not having a stun, and them having strength in other areas would be more interesting. So I don't know. That's just my opinion on it. That's why I don't like them.
As Mashiga's pointing out, though, he says, isn't the point of the sun to accommodate for shamans not having a gap closer?
Right. Well, so you don't have a gap closer, and that is what enhancement shamans are supposed to be about. At least in my mind, it's, do not let me reach you. If I reach you, I beat you, and that's sort of the gameplay. And then the wolves are like, actually, this whole gameplay is gone. Right now, I beat you if I have my 3-minute cooldown, and I don't beat you if I don't have it. Right. But you do have some gap close. It's not great, but you can. You can use decoy totem on self to become immune to slows and roots for 10 seconds. If you're stupid enough to get within 20 yards of me, I can get with a frost shock. If you're within 30 yards of me, I can use one GC to earth bind and then another GC to throw it at you. I have ways to gap close. They're not great ways to gap close, but that was the class. The class was, I don't have great ways to gap close, but if I do gap close, then I get to go ham and you get punished for it. And now it's like I get to gap close for free and I get to stun you for free, but I also kind of don't go as ham on you as I should be going, in my opinion. And so it sort of makes this class a little bit homogenized in PvP compared to other classes. I think you can very reasonably say, yeah, but that gameplay is terrible. Ask phase 3, Ret and Warrior and Feral Druid enjoyers whether they enjoyed fighting Shaman, whose entire strength weakness was they couldn't gap close, but they did gap close and they beat you. And they say, well, I'm melee, I have to be in melee with you, so I just lose because your class is balanced around beating anyone that can get in melee. Fair enough. I think I could be totally wrong in saying that this is good gameplay, but in my mind, it's gameplay I want to preserve. And that's kind of homogenized out with wolves. Might be good to homogenize it out. Just in my opinion, I don't like it.
Okay. Guys, just we'll touch on Ellie just to wrap it up. I know none of you guys really played that much Ellie. Please speak up if you do. But from what you've dabbled in with SOD or retail or whatever, what do you feel SOD did right or wrong with Ellie that should be considered for a Classic Plus?
I don't know if right is the correct word to use, but giving them massive AoE damage with the burn rune and lower cooldown on chain lightning.
I think.
Yeah. Are you saying was burned too much?
Well, for SOD with everybody getting AoE, it was nice that they got that boost, but I don't know if it's necessarily something that we would want in the Classic Plus because I'm not a huge fan of the go AoE gameplay.
Yeah. Gally,
I think what they did, it made sense.
Gally, go for it.
Yeah. If we're looking at minimal changes to 1.12 for Classic Plus, I honestly think Lava Burst kind of fills that gap. That Ellie I think was always kind of in a decent spot. I think everyone said their main issue is mana, right? So if you give them some kind of decent mana return and Lava Burst in addition to Flame Shock, Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, I think they'd be pretty happy, honestly.
I think Elemental in 1.12 is sitting in a good spot. I'm looking at their talent tree, and I played a little bit the pre-patch into TBC, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I think one thing they could do is they could get rid of Earth's Grasp, which is just the Stone Claw Totem and the Radius Earth Bind, and you could throw Burn there, maybe not on row 2, but maybe a little bit lower. Put improved Fire Totems on row 2 and put Burn on row 4. Or 5 or something of that nature, really lean into that elemental aspect.
Can I ask? Sorry, go Fred.
I mean, Elemental Shaman is certainly good in PvP in vanilla. There's no doubt about that. Good in your 10-man more Sun Bulge. But in PvE, I don't think they really are in a good spot. I mean, they're doing 60% of the damage of a mage, and and mages are not doing anywhere close to the damage of a warrior. I think they're doing 40% of the damage of a warrior. So I wouldn't consider looking at the 80 parse next. I don't really think that's in a good spot in PvE.
I meant just looking at the talents, just looking at them, they look great. I know, in 1.12 they were dog shit. Totally, anything compared against a warrior, especially a shaman, is complete garbage. Not pulling near the numbers, right? But I think that's more of a scaling issue. Another issue that the Elemental Shaman had at 1.12 was mana. That was a huge issue. So if they had some type of mana return, built into their talent tree or even into their spells, even, I think that would allow them to cast more, which increases their damage and yada yada yada.
Well, bear in mind, I'm looking at the 80 parse for Nax. I would not anticipate mana is an issue. They're doing 60% of the damage of mages, right? I can look at the 95 parse and calculate it. It's probably around the same amount. So that if you're 95 parse and you're killing the bosses in like 45 seconds, mana is not an issue, and you're still doing 60% of the damage. So it seems to me that it's not a.
Well, then it goes down to scaling.
Right. Yes, I agree. It's a scaling issue. But
I say, go ahead.
But if your point is that their talents themselves look nice, I agree. They have really impactful talents. I mean, you have a talent that increases your crit damage. You have a talent that increases your range. You have a talent that lowers the cast time of your lightning bolt by a full second. I mean, I think those all feel really good, and their talents do feel good.
They're just not physically doing anything for the class.
yes. There's other issues with them. I mean, hypothetically, if you were to add, I'm curious if they were to add, an elemental. So, in SOD, for those who are not playing it, they've added versions of the tier sets for each spec. So, for example, Shaman has 4 tier sets: one that's resto focused, one elemental focused, one tank focused, and one enhanced focused. And so, I'm curious if they were to port that system over into a Classic Plus, which I really hope they would, whether that maybe addresses the issue, because it could just be like, well, an elemental Shaman could hypothetically scale. It just doesn't actually have gear that can equip.
Gally, you were going to say something before?
Yeah, I think if damage is an issue, you could always just kind of lean into Overload too, because it doesn't really change anything, but it does give you that RNG. The double spell that is cool. That kind of everyone likes to see that pop off, right? You see your lava burst fucking fly through the air after you just pressed it. That's always fun.
Guys, here's a weird question. From hearing you guys talk about this over the last hour as we start to wrap this up, it sounds kind of like if I made the following relatively small changes, and I know they're big, but I mean in terms of few changes. If I just go, all right, here's Lava Burst, Maelstrom Weapon, 6-second Storm Strike, and Riptide, it sounds like we're 3/4 of the way to you guys being happy with that version of the Classic Plus Shaman. Is that right to say?
For playstyle, yeah. I want to say that Fred made a really good point about the gearing, because having viable tier sets is huge, and having good gear available is really massive and changes how damage goes, or how output goes, which I think is huge and we don't really think about. But yeah, if you just add those, I think all specs would feel good.
Especially for enhance, if you just look at the current gear that's available, it's all the male stuff has heavy amounts of agility on it. So if they were to do something like that and give Shaman 1 AP for every agility, they wouldn't even need to redo a lot of the current gear in order for you to be able to get a competent set out of it.
I would say that I think that's probably right that you're getting most of the way there. I definitely don't think you're fully there. For Enhanced in particular, I think part of it is that it's a battle mage and that you get spell power from attack power. That kind of completes the promise that, hey, as you scale along, your lightning bolts and your earth shocks are still relevant. So I do think mental dexterity is also kind of required for Enhanced Shaman.
Oh, and one thing we didn't talk on is whether or not we mentioned it here and there, is whether or not we want in Classic 1.12 them to kind of lean into the tank shaman or not. I think an additional talent point could be your spell power or whatever stat you want contributes to your defense rating. I think that would be kind of a neat little twist there.
I'm just going to say, and I want you guys to say whatever you want off the back of this, but I'm so conflicted because I don't know that the new specs like your tank shaman, tank rogue, etc., I don't know that I want them in Classic Plus. I lean more that I do want them, but it's not a definitive answer. But I can say I'm going to miss the fuck out of them, and I don't want this relationship to end with SOD. I would love to see them in Classic Plus. I'm open to the argument from people on whether or not they're a good or a bad thing to add to Classic Plus, whether it's, no, Josh, just shore up the tried and true specs that we know. We don't need new tanks and healers. I personally think you can never have enough tanks and healers. It's like you've kind of eradicated the tank problem with everything they've done in SOD, and that's a good thing for a game. I'm going to miss the fuck out of them if they just disappear. Do you guys think that Tank Shaman should be a thing in Classic Plus?
I do.
Yes.
Definitely.
You've really pissed me off that you weren't more adamant that they're definitely necessary.
No,
Like, just more
but that's the thing. Like, they probably are necessary, but I'm like, if you really, really, really short up Prot Paladin and Bear fucking tank, Bear Druid, and you've got your Paladin, Warrior, or Druid tank options, and they're all fucking awesome. I just
That's the thing,
don't know.
I don't think you can add Pally tank and not add Shaman tank, because then that's just a massive faction imbalance.
Yeah, no, that's
You're
true.
absolutely
That's
astronomically unbalanced.
That's true. Sorry, I forgot about that. Fuck.
So,
I mean,
it's sorry, you go.
It just seems to me that what is the point in removing fun new playstyles? And the
Yeah.
answer is, well, you don't want classes to feel homogenized. You don't want classes to feel like each other. But so long as the specs and the way that they tank feel distinct from one another, then I think they're totally great. They're good additions. And it seems to me like they do. Like, I don't think Paladin tank versus Shami tank versus Warlock tank versus Feral Druid tank. I don't think they feel very similar. They to me feel very distinct. I mean, sure, they all like gather everything up and AoE them down, but I mean, thematically they're very different. And so long as they're not like bleeding onto each other and ruining sort of this RPG element of the game, I think they're good to keep.
Yeah, I'd love to see them keep it.
It'd be a huge case if you don't know what you got till it's gone.
Yeah.
Because then you go back to 1.12 and okay, Bears could tank. Brother, there was about 3 on each fucking server. So we're pretty much going back to a world where only fucking warriors can tank. No more warlocks, rogues, shamans, viable bears that are actually popular and fucking played, and warrior tanks on top, and pally tanks. You want to go back to just fucking warriors tanking? Okay. If they launch that, I guarantee you within 2 months, everyone will be squealing, going.
Oh, I definitely don't want to go back to that world. Like I've said, like opening up, like in a world where we need tanks and healers, unfurling that and making it more accessible is good for the long-term health of an MMO. All I'm asking is there a world where you can still, like, if let's say shamans and paladins are available on both factions, and fucking maybe, I don't know, shaman can tank, paladin can tank, druid can tank, warrior can tank. Is that enough? I don't know, but I'd love to see more.
I think that would be enough, but again, I'm still just in that camp of more is better. Like, I wouldn't be annoyed if rogues can tank in Classic Plus like they tank now. But I know that thematically some people don't like rogue tanks. Like, they just find it a bit strange.
Yeah.
But like Fred said, they're very much in their own fucking lane. Like, they're an avoidance-based tank.
Yeah.
More so than the others, which makes it kind of cool.
But the beauty of the rogue tank has been, that we've seen through SOD, is that if you don't want to tank, you don't tank. It's not like Classic where it's like, throw on your fucking shield and tank this dungeon, dickhead, we need a tank. Or like, oh, I have to play tank if I want to do content, even though I don't really like tanking. Like, no one has said to the rogue, mate, can you just tank this dungeon, fuckwit? Do you know what I mean? Because there's been so many options. There's tanks everywhere. There's healers everywhere. And so it's really given that flexibility to people to just do what they fucking want to do.
Yeah, I don't know. Somehow there's people out there that don't like that people get to play the game in more ways that they like to.
Guys, we'll wrap it up and just sort of say anything we've left on the table. Anything you were dying to say, Fred, that we haven't discussed yet on what you want in Classic Plus for your beloved Shaman?
No, I think there's an interesting discussion to be had about, because when I first joined, you were talking about retail and sort of AoEing down dungeons, and I've had discussions with people about whether that would be, was it going too far in SOD? But I think that's a different discussion entirely.
Okay. Gally, Zim, Stan?
Yeah, one thing I just want to mention real quick that wasn't talked about was the fact that runes are swappable throughout the raid, and I feel that I have a completely different set of runes between trash and bosses, and in one camp I really love that, and then on another side, it's like, am I going to have to do this? And I don't have to do it, right? I could be totally fine staying with my normal runes for bosses throughout the trash, sure. But like, it is fun to do big damage on trash.
Zim?
I think the trade-off ends up being that if you have it all tied up in talents and there's no rune system, that people will just have a AoE DPS spec and then a single target DPS spec, and then it kind of loses some of the flavor of like having to or being able to do multiple roles.
Zim, final thoughts?
Yeah, just kind of going off of that. I feel like the shaman talent tree, for specifically for enhancement, I think can be arranged in a multitude of ways to incorporate those, other expansion talent points, the runes we haven't saw, however you want to say. How you do that, that's where, I liked Fred's idea of like, hey, you go down this lane, you're this type of shaman. You go down this lane, you're this type of shaman. It's kind of a spec within a spec almost. I really much like that idea, and I'm probably going to go check out retail because it sounds like it's very
you're
familiar.
literally describing retail. Yeah, what they've done now also with the hero talents from 70 to 80. Like, I am now, you're not just an enhanced shaman, you're a fucking, I don't even know what the name of their hero specs are, but like, for example, with a warrior, it's you choose, like, am I a Fury Mountain Thane or am I a Fury Slayer? They're two different specs. But then also, even outside of the hero talents, even just by picking Fury or picking Enhance, like we said, there's 3 different playstyles, like quite different playstyles built into the talent tree that you must choose between.
Yeah, and you mentioned it before we started talking about, Shaman Classic. Like, what if, Blizzard, was like, hey, let's do SOD as a soft entry for Classic players to check out retail. And I thought that was incredibly tinfoily, but it makes sense.
Brother, we've been coerced along to classic kata, and SOD's pretty much just classic kata like abilities in vanilla. And retail has gone back 3 or 4 steps, so we're only like 2 steps away from playing retail if you like kata, because they've reined it in, and we've been pulled along that road so far that you jump on retail and you go, oh, I literally know 80% of these buttons already. I've been pressing them in fucking Blackwing Descent.
We all need that guinea pig mount now more than ever, now that I realize what's been done to us over the last year.
I want it with a big saddle, some fancy fucking a helmet on my guinea pig. I'd like that on my mount.
And you know what? I'm okay with it. Like, I'm still blown away that I'm enjoying retail, and why I'm enjoying retail is starting to make more sense. Like, when you really get into the nuts and bolts of it, we have kind of been conditioned. But anyway, that's just me. It's not everyone. Metzen is the dealer and I am the buyer, says Mashiga. Guys, look, we'll jump off Shaman and end it there. Frugo, are you there? We might have lost Frugo.
Yeah, I'm here. I was muting myself.
No, all good, man. Look, do you want to do... We might only do about 20 minutes on it, but you ready to talk guild management for Phase 5?
Sure, I'd love to.
Mate, thank you so much for hitting me up via DM. You reached out and said, Josh, can we talk about on the podcast sort of what's going on with guilds and these new flex raids in Phase 5? I said, I'd fucking love to chat about that. Let's throw you in the deep end, mate. Look, everyone was so stoked to see Blizzard go with this flex raiding option for Phase 5. You be the master of your own adventure. Take as many as you want, pretty much up until, a minimum threshold and a maximum threshold. Take 10, take 20, fucking whatever. Take 20, take 40, fucking whatever. Are you happy with this for Phase 5?
I am. The standard life cycle of a guild, if I could monologue for a little bit, is you start your guild, everybody's hyped, everybody signs up for the first raid. You have, let's say the raid cap is 20 people, you have about 24, 23 signups. You make your roster, you got to bench a couple people, and you do the first raid, and then if you're a smart guild, you cycle in those people with like a bench rotation, and you let people know, hey, we got a couple extra melee or we got a couple extra range, and we're kind of rotate people to maintain a healthy roster. And the reason you do that is, let's say you have a couple call outs, you bring in those bench players and you're good to go. If you have an exact roster of 20 people, what's going to happen is you're going to have callouts eventually. My rule of thumb of leading guilds for since 2019 is that about 10% of your player base is going to call out on any given week. So if you have a 20-man raid, you want a raid of 22 people. If you have a 40-man raid, you want to have a roster of 44 people, so that you can make sure that you're not pugging anybody. And so what the flex rating does that's so great is that you can bring those 4 extra people. You don't have to bench them. And if you have call outs, you just bring 20 people. Now it puts guilds that are focused on parsing in a really weird spot because you know Warcraft logs is gonna stop that from happening, right? They're probably gonna make it so that any logs that have more than 20 people are gonna be invalid, and go on from there. But what I think guilds can do is, have your 24 people that you run every single week, or 22 people, and then on like a parse week, like a DMF week, like we're Horde. So let's say it's in Mulgore, everybody gets DMF. You have your bench of 20 people. Sorry, the last 2 people, they can't make it. You pick the 2 bottom people and you bench them, and you do your parse run. And then every other week out of the month, you do your 22, 24 people, and you're good to go. And it's just going to stop from, if you bench the same people every week, they're going to quit, or they're going to find a new guild. And then you're going to find yourself in a position where you only have 20 people on your team. And then those people are going to have 1 or 2 call outs, and you're going to pug. And let's say you're in a loot council guild. How do you pug people without switching the loot system? And then your raid team starts to not perform, and then your high parsing people are going to get upset, and then your raid team's going to die. So I think all around is just a huge benefit to everybody if you're smart about it. Like my guild, we're going to go in there and we're going to raid with 30 people because I have a lot of people that want to play and I don't want to bench them, and we're just going to take the consequence of having that loot diluted a little bit, but we're going to have a good time. And then we're going to have another team that's just capped at 20, and they're going to do parses, and then anybody who they bench are just going to come to my Thursday 30-man run.
How's that conversation around the loot dilution gone? Have people generally been positive and not given a shit about the loot as long as they get into the raid every week?
People will take a consistent run over loot dilution any day of the week because they would much rather come to a 30-man run that's fun and fast and clean versus getting benched and having to pug and either getting ninja looted by some guild or having to be in a 4-hour Blackwing lair.
And I guess at the end of the day, it's probably not as big of a headache for you as a GM, given, if you do have some experience with 1.12, knowing that, hey, we're used to 40-man raids with fuck all loot being dropped anyway. This isn't a new issue. Is it okay for you?
Absolutely. I mean, I spend at least an hour every week going over my roster and trying to figure out who to bench and making the hard call of, okay, well, I got this guy in last week. I'm going to have to bench him so I can pull in someone who hasn't been in 2 weeks or 1 week. Now it's just, I can just bring in everybody who I want to be there, and it's no big deal.
Can I ask a stupid question, which I can guess the answer to, but I'll ask anyway? Like I maybe because I'm not a raider and I don't give a fuck about raiding, I've never had a bad reaction to being benched. I get the message from the guild manager saying, hey, Josh, you're riding the pine this week. And I go, yeah, cool, whatever. See you next week. Have you ever had, what's your experience with, drastic negative reactions to people being put on the bench for a week?
Oh, I mean, I've had guild quits on the spot.
Yeah.
I'll put out the roster and someone, boom, quits the guild because they got benched. They're like, I'm going to find a place where I don't get benched. It's like, okay, well, do you want a healthy roster? Or, I mean, the thing is people, especially raid loggers, this is their only time they play the game. They want to perform. If they put in the effort, they got all their world buffs, consumables, they blocked out the day. They said, hey, wife, kids, I'm raiding this one time during the week. Every other hour of the week is yours, but this 1 hour of the week is mine, and I want to raid. And all of a sudden they get benched, and then they don't even get to play that day. You know, they just want to have fun and pump, and if they can't do that, they're going to find a place they can.
You just reminded me of a funny story. Let me just relay this quick story to you from the Molten Core raid that I did with Brotherhood 2 weeks ago. That anyone from Brotherhood listening will get a chuckle out of because they'll remember what I'm talking about. Just give me your reaction and any stories you got along these lines that might be similar to this, or how you would react in this situation. So we're in Molten Core and we get to my god, what's the third last boss of Molten Core? Big giant guy. What's his name? I'm going blank.
Golemag?
We get to Golemag, right? We kill Golemag, and then we do the wander up the hill to fucking forgetting everyone's name today.
Major Domo.
Thank you, Major Domo. God, I'm an idiot. Anyway, about, I would say, 4 minutes has passed because I think we take a toilet break. People are just sort of dicking around and we're discussing a few things. People are mucking around, joking and shit. Just, you know, it's a nice little sort of wind down moment between Golemag and Major Domo. And some loot's being distributed in this time as well. And everyone in Brotherhood is fucking lovely. GM is a fucking Ginto is the best, all that shit. So Ginto's doing the loot. And they do a soft reserve system. I know not everyone loves soft reserve. I quite like it. But they just do, hey guys, we don't really do loot council. We just do soft reserve. Fine, no one cares. It's fine. They hand out an item to someone. And 4 minutes later, just before the pull on Major Domo, this guy speaks up and goes like, so are we just ignoring soft reserves this week or what? And he said, he doesn't say this in voice chat, which everyone is in. He says it in text chat in game. And so people go like, what do you mean? And he goes, I soft res that item that you just handed to someone else. And then he G quits on the spot, right?
Okay.
And the guys were in the process of saying via voice, like, oh shit, I'm sorry. I'll go back and check the soft reses. Maybe my add-on fucked up. That wasn't a nefarious move. Please let me go double check this. If you're right, we'll get it traded to you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they go back and he goes, oh shit, my add-on did fuck up. That's my bad. You know, we'll get it over to you. But by this stage, the guy G quit. And he then did the move, and we watched the chat. This happened in very quick succession.
He pulled
For all of his he left the raid. All of his alts G quit, logged on to 5 alts. So and so has left the guild. So and so has left the guild. So and so has left the guild. All within like 20 seconds of each other. And we're like laughing at this point, going, "Oh my god." Over a completely innocent mistake, and even worse, a solvable issue, because he could have still had his item via the trade. And I was in tears laughing at this childlike behavior. And I just said to the guys straight up, like, I was pretty savage about it, probably a bit too Australian in this moment, where I was just like, fuck that cunt. He's the exact type of prick you wouldn't have wanted in this guild anyway if he's going to behave like that over such a silly little solvable issue. In hearing that story, does that ring any bells to you, or how do you feel about that for a go?
You know, people like that, they are a blessing for two main reasons. One, you don't want those people in your guild anyways. They would have caused you a lot more headache down the road. Like, let's say you're in a position in BWL where you only have 20 raiders and they G quit, now you have 19. So they did you a favor by leaving early, and now you can fill that spot with someone who's not an asshole. But two, they also give your guild memes that you can reference later on and bring camaraderie to your guilds, because then next time there's a fuck up in the soft res, jokingly you can be like, hey, are we not going to address the soft reserve this week? And you can refer back to him quitting. We had a guy when I had my all dwarf guild in Wrath of the Lich King. Obviously, you join an all dwarf guild because you're there to have fun. You're there to be a dwarf, and you're there to just against all odds defeat the content, right? We don't have bloodlust, we don't have battle res, anything like that, and we were progging on hard mode Yogg Saron, and we decided to bring in the keepers and do it easy mode because we had been progging for like an hour and we were down a man. We were 9-manning 10-man hard mode, and this guy on the spot goes, "I've been far too patient with this guild," and he fucking G quits on the spot. We're like, and so to this day, and we're not even a dwarf guild anymore. We play Horde on Crusader Strike now as Dragon Forged, and and we still say I've been far too patient with this guild to this day. And so we reference memes of people who have ghosts of G quits past. Because it just it's just funny.
That's the way. No, the two big things that got me from this story was that it's sort of indicative. Look, you don't know what's going on at the guy's, where his microphone is and what the situation is. He might not have been able to talk. But the big sticking points for me was he had almost 5 minutes to say something and chose to wait for whatever reason. And also he was sitting there in the voice channel with us and didn't say anything via voice. Like, it takes 2 seconds to be like, push to talk. Hey guys, I soft res that. Can we actually give that to me? Okay, cool. Nobody would have cared. Say that. But then also, if you can't talk for whatever reason, your mic's on mute, don't have a mic, whatever. Why did you wait 5 minutes to bring it up just before the major domo pull after the toilet break when you're clearly sitting there seething and feeling aggrieved? It was really weird. But anyway.
And he was a regular member. It wasn't like a pug or
Oh,
something.
I don't know. He was in the guild, so
he was in the guild,
I think
so
he was
yeah.
a new joiner. I think.
Yeah, that's weird.
I think. Yeah. Anyway, back to the issue at hand, mate. Tell me which raid you're excited to kind of manage the most. This ZG or BWL? What do you got on your brain there?
I'm more excited for BWL just because it relieves my stress as a guild leader and roster manager because I can just bring people in. I'm actually starting to get a little bit stressed about ZG because between the three raids we have, that's 60 to 70, almost 80 people plus alts doing 10-man ZGs, and people in the guild are going to expect regular ZGs going on. Okay, well, my Discord is already a clusterfuck, and adding in new channels is like, it drives my OCD crazy. And so now I'm trying to figure, okay, how are we going to do ZGs? Are people just going to post and are looking for group chat? Like, hey, I want to do a ZG, please react to this post. Or God forbid, do we use Discord threads? I mean, no one uses those. Trying to figure out how we're going to do signups, or do we just do impromptu ZGs or what? So I'm sure it'll work itself out, but it starts to give me some PTSD of the Karazhan days of TBC where, people are creating 10 different Karazhan rosters, but luckily it's not as difficult as Karazhan was. So I'm sure it'll be more casual than I'm stressing it out to be.
Mate, has SOD presented any unique guild management worries for you, or is it kind of same old? I've run guilds before and I kind of know the nature of the game now, or has something in SOD really pissed you off, or have you really loved something about SOD in terms of guild management?
What I've liked about SOD, or at least I liked about SOD, was that because the raids were smaller, I could have more raid teams, and those raid teams could have alts that would help fill other raid teams.
Yeah.
But the issue I had with that is I was a little too trusting in people, so I'd bring in someone and be like, hey, you can lead a raid team in my guild, and I'll help support that and whatnot. But what would happen there is I would promote them to officer, and I'd say, okay, you do your own thing. Well, then the issue with that is that now those people have absolute power and they can do whatever they want, but they're still representing my guild, right? They're hosting a raid team, and so they make a weird decision like on a loot situation, and now I have to pull them aside and say, hey, you're in my guild, you can't just ninja loot yourself. And no one's ever done this to me, but I've seen guilds where they have 13 raid teams, and the guild leader has to manage all those raid teams as far as representing the guild goes. And so it could cause some problems. I've been fortunate, haven't had too much drama, although recently we did have some drama. We lost a raid team, but it can pose its challenges, but also can give a lot of freedom to where you can have a raid team on every night of the week, and then that one raid team has alts that helps fill other raid teams, and then in BWL flex raiding, it just creates another avenue of flexibility. So I think SOD and its small raid teams has been huge. I hope in Classic Plus it's something similar where it's a 20 to 40 man situation.
It's funny because I think a lot of GMs probably agree with you there that it was easy. There were difficulties, like you explained, but a lot of them loved the 10-man rating days of Phase 1. That was a lot of fun when there were teams going everywhere. But it's funny that you just mentioned that story about getting the rogue person in to run one of the 10-man teams and then maybe having them fuck the guild a little bit, or you not being able to supervise them as easily or whatever. It's funny in that I was that guy, to be honest with you, Frugo. I sort of I half took over a raid team. I started raid leading one of our teams through Gnomeregon. I'd never raid led before, but we had like 3 or 4 teams running Noma, and I was a tank, and it was just kind of like, oh, Josh, can you just raid lead one week? And I did it, and then I started doing it the next 5 or 6 weeks in a row. And Tyne kind of took charge of this team without asking for it. And what wound up happening, I say like I was that guy that kind of all the power went to my head in a way, but in a weirdly non-toxic way, in that this is a raid team with Countdown regulars, Hunk, Marcus, Voodoo, we were all there. And we basically said, and I just kind of reinforced it, going like, guys, it's a level up raid. We're just rolling on shit. We're not like, I know the guild has rules in the other teams about like loot council and class prio and all that shit. And I said, we're not fucking doing any of that. None of this shit matters. It's a level up raid. Who gives a fuck? Just if you want something, roll on it. You know what I mean? Just don't be a dickhead. Don't be a healer rolling on DPS gear, and just fucking roll. We don't care. And that was kind of the rule that I helped enforce and just, created a more relaxed environment in that regard. But we had one of the officers in our raid who kept trying to kind of tap the sign and be like, guys, the guild's actually determined that this item is class prio to, lo and behold, the class that he happens to play. And we were always like, no, fuck off. And I really did not get along with this guy, and we clashed a few times, where he was like blatantly trying to loot funnel to himself, in my opinion. But he was really like, we should do loot. We should talk about items and do like a semi-loot council. And absolutely, if this item drops, only this class can roll on it. And we just kind of told him to get fucked. And I took over that team and enforced a more laid-back attitude. So that might have been something that would rub some GMs the wrong way, because I should just be abiding by the guild's rules. But I basically gave the middle finger to the guild and said, no, fuck it. We're taking it easy.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the really interesting things that came with SOD, with having smaller raid teams, is it created bigger guilds. And so it created just a lot of politics, good or bad. Just a lot of politics have to happen in order to maintain that. So either, like, my guild is very relaxed. I'm like, okay, each leader has their own loot system. If you don't like that loot system, you can join a different team or a different guild. I don't really care. And so there's no overarching rules, whereas some guilds like yours have overarching rules that they all need to abide by. And so just as far as like the guild politics goes, it creates situations too where, I have a decently sized guild. I'm hanging out in guild leadership chats in the Crusader Strike Discord, and someone says, hey, my guild's dying, and is there someone I could merge into? And I've handled a lot of mergers over my time. Back in Classic, if you were a casual guild trying to clear Naxxramas, you have an attrition rate of, in deep Nax, back when we were doing like 4 Horsemen prog, I would lose 5 raiders a week. And so I was recruiting constantly to keep that number up to 40. And at one time, I remember looking at my raid rosters. I had a roster of 60 people just to maintain a 40-man team. And I was merging in guilds and all this different stuff. And so I learned a lot from that in Classic. And so here in SOD, I've merged in about 3 or 4 raid teams to fill my current raid teams. And in fact, I just merged in Ebonheart. His group has merged into ours, his raid team. And if you play it right and you're give them if it's a whole team and you give them their autonomy and you just help them fill, it's no big deal. But you also have to manage like culture issues. You know, you merge in a team and they're really sweaty, or at least like super hardcore. They expect that out of the people that fill their team and run in that team versus, you know, it's just a lot of expectations management. And yeah, it's a lot of work, but if you do it right and you treat the people well, I think it can work out just fine.
Mate, I've got 2 more questions for you before we wrap it up. I'll just sort of say, are there any items in Phase 5 that you've seen data mined or anything on the horizon that gives you a headache as a guild leader?
Yes and no. Because I'm more relaxed about loot, most people on my team are like, whatever, I'll get it when I get it. But one thing to consider is a lot of people in SOD play melee DPS. You look at any raid roster, it's a lot of rogues, a lot of warriors, a lot of enhancement shaman. And the weapons in Blackwing Lair are going to be very contested. So rogues recently spent most of Phase 1 as daggers, and then recently they just kind of follow whatever Simonize says, which is good because he's a very smart guy. They recently all switched to swords. And so now they're wanting the brute blades and stuff like that. And or at least actually I don't really know much about rogues, but all I know is they want swords and they want weapons that aren't daggers. And luckily most of the warriors already have their brute blades and whatnot, so it's not super contested. But in Blackwing Lair, chromatically tempered sword is going to be wanted by warriors and rogues. There's a new axe that they made that's really, really good. That's going to be wanted by enhancement shamans, warriors. So specifically warriors, which is what I play, double dip into, you know, shamans and rogues and have to fight over those things. And same with like Drake Fang Talisman is going to be obviously wanted by everybody. But I think guilds, specifically talking about guild issues, are going to have headaches when trying to prio those items. And, you know, a lot of guilds are going to make the sense and, hey, you're a warrior, use a two-handed weapon. That we can't use those, so you should get prio on that, and I should get prio on the one-handers. Well, that's going to be hard because two-hander does right now it's kind of close, but it is better to dual wield. So I personally, I'm just gonna take the two-handers. I'm gonna let my enhancement shaman have the axe and the rogues have the swords and call it a day. I'll pick them up later. But a lot of guilds aren't gonna be that way. They're gonna be trying to prio those things to certain people and fight over it and whatnot.
Okay. You just made me think, by the way, the thrilling conclusion to that story that horrified people that I told about, I don't know, fucking 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, whatever it was, when I talked about my Dal Rens and I took Dal Rens from another person in my guild. For whatever it's worth, that guy ended up getting all the weapons later on, which might be karma. He has gotten the best drop luck and gets all the best weapons very early on, so I haven't felt bad at all about taking his Dal Rens. And he did get his Dal Rens in the end, by the way, just a few days after that story. But either way, guys, Frugo, mate, here's a really interesting one that we'll wind up on, and please just throw in anything that you want to say if you haven't had a chance to say yet about guild management in Phase 5. But I remember a big talking point from Phase 1 around 10-man teams being the pros and cons of cliques forming. And, you know, we just had that raised in Discord chat where the guys say, you know, you can develop a lot of cliques in a big guild with different teams, as Mashiga says, and I completely agree. I don't know. I genuinely can't say whether the development of small cliques via 10-man teams in WoW is good or bad for the guild. I like it. A lot of people don't. What do you do, or how do you feel about these teams forging and then kind of, you know, struggling to mesh well with others later down the track or not?
My biggest point of advice is if you're going to lead a guild with multiple teams in it, make sure that all of those teams at least have similar mentalities on how they want to play the game. If you have try not to have A teams, B teams, C teams, some runs that are really sweaty and some runs that are really casual. What's going to happen is it's going to create a divide in your guild as a whole. When you're trying to run ZGs and, whatever, someone from the sweaty team is like, oh, I'll do a ZG. And then they look at the roster like, that's from the C team. I don't want to be with them. This is going to be a 4-hour ZG. And they're going to start to not group with people. And so try to make sure your mentality is similar across all teams.
So like as you fend the kids off with one arm, no doubt, while you're trying to pod with me, I just have to say, like, did you find that you preferred to, because this was the one question that kept coming up in our guild back at the start of SOD, did you find that you prefer to mix people up regularly, or do you just let the friends play with their friends and keep the team stagnant?
Usually the friends kind of played with the friends because they joined a team. Like I would appoint a raid leader. They would build their team. It's usually with their friends and some other people. But I did run into the issue where I had a really kind of try-hard loot council team mixed in with my more casual teams, and it did end up blowing up in the end, and they ended up leaving, and it was a whole issue. But I wish them the best, and I hope they do well. But now my team is more, and I say casual in the sense that we don't take the game seriously. I have a raid team. I call it Margaritaville is the name of the raid team. And we just listen to tunes and hang out and blast. But like we did Heat 3 Molten Core in an hour and 23 minutes last night. So it's not like we're super casual. We play fast. We play hard. But the loot just like, I do gargle, soft reserve, 2 soft reserve. The loot takes me about 5 seconds as they're clearing trash, and we just pass it out and keep on moving. And most of the time people are like, actually, I think that's better for you. Why don't you have that? And they're just cool about loot. So I don't know, maybe I'm just lucky with my raid team, but no one fights about it. People just kind of let it go.
Oh, that's good. I always enjoyed just like static teams of just like, let me play with my friends. And yeah, I should like get out there and meet, you can make new friends if you jumble up the teams. I get that. But every time we jumbled up the teams, there was always one massive fuckwit in the 10-man who wouldn't shut the fuck up the whole raid.
Yeah.
So it's always the biggest cunts are for some reasons also the ones that can't shut up. And just like every time I wasn't with my friends, it's like, oh my God, we had the worst time some raid nights unless we were with just our mates.
Here's my word of advice. A lot of times you're going to have that one guy in the guild that no one likes and he talks too much and he causes problems. And the guild leader's trying to be nice because, of course, you're a more casual guild. You're trying to be welcoming to new players and be nice and whatnot. If you have someone in the guild that nobody likes and causes problems, even if there's no reason to kick them, just kick them.
Oh, 100%. I'm so
just
on board.
Fucking kick them.
Yep.
Because they're going to cause problems and they're going to make people quit the game.
Yep.
And you're going to lose good people because you didn't want to be mean and you kept the bad person.
Yes.
Just kick them. It's not a job. They can't sue you for harassment.
Yes.
There's no issues there. Just fucking kick them. There's no problem with it.
I completely agree. I have begged GMs in the past, just turf this idiot now before it gets worse. And like only the smallest slight, I don't care. If I get that whiff of you're a prick, I know it's only going to get worse. And I'm like, just kick him. And GMs always do the same thing. Oh, gee, I don't know, man. Like, he might turn good in the end. Like they're really shy of like, I don't get why people are so okay with being pricks in WoW, except when it comes to kicking someone. Like, that's like the death sentence. I don't get it. It's such a nothing move. Nobody cares.
Exactly. It's just, if they're going to cause problems, and also, if you have 2 people in your guild that are constantly fighting, kick them both. I mean, if they're going to cause problems consistently, or figure out who you want to keep and kick the other one. But just don't deal with problems you don't have to deal with, especially when it comes to like someone just consistently being a loot whore. And even if they don't ninja something, they're just constantly rolling on stuff and taking things from other people and causing problems. And it was like an unknown, it's like an unspoken thing where no one wants to talk shit about them, but they're causing problems, and you can just tell that they are causing problems, and no one's going to really be upset if they're kicked. Just kick them. Just save yourself the headache.
I hate that player. I hate that player that is always talking about loot. And like you say, it's not that they ninja things, but everything that happens is, are we really giving that to an enhanced shaman?
Yeah.
It's like, shut the fuck up, you loser.
Yeah, exactly. Just we're giving you permission here on the Countdown Podcast, GMs. Just kick them.
Oh man, I've had a lot of triggering moments just with, I don't know, just it's funny. The more I play with WoW players, the more I bitch about them. It's
Right.
there's so many good ones out there, but there's so many bad ones.
I mean, you can have a 40-man raid team, and one person can ruin that just by being annoying.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's interesting. That's good guild advice. Is just fucking cut out the problem early and don't second guess it. We're not like, I think you can't be sued is the funniest and best thing to say. Like, it's not a crime to kick someone from a guild. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, and if people want to cry poor about like, oh, there's a person behind that screen, and what if you can really just talk to them and get them to turn around? Like, no, if they're easily and like have no trouble displaying dickhead, like when they don't even know you and they're like confident in being a dickhead, just fucking get rid of them.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to pug. Like if you're a 20-man raid team and you don't want to kick that really annoying guy because you're like, well, now we'll have 19 and I'll have to pug. Just pug a person. It's better to have a new pug who's like chill and fun to play with than a person who's going to make 3 or 4 more people quit because they hate raiding because of that one annoying person. And then you got a lot bigger problem on your hands.
All right, man. Well, look, did we leave anything on the table? Is that pretty much everything we wanted to get off our chest?
Yeah, I guess I would just going into flex rating, I think people are going to be really nervous about how to handle the flex rating, whether or not you're going to have some people in your guild says, hey, I want to parse. I don't want a 25-man raid team because it's going to make it too easy. For one, the 20-man hard mode, the black one, is actually pretty difficult when it's tuned for just 20. It's pretty challenging. I would bring more than 20 the first week, and then choose which weeks you're going to do your parse run, and then do your bench. Don't be afraid to go in there with more than 20 people and tell the people that really want to parse, hey, you'll have your time to parse, but right now we're just going to get everybody in and clear the content and have fun.
All right, well said. All right, guys. Well, look, we might wind it up there for the day. Thank you so much, Frugo. Any shout outs before I let you go?
I don't know. Shout out Dragon Forged on Crusader Strike, my guild. You guys are awesome.
That's the way. Guys, thank you so much for being here, everyone. It's always a delight. Any other shout outs? If anyone here is still here, anything to say? Any shout outs before we go, Gally?
No shout out to you.
For being a retail shill? Yeah, thanks, man.
For playing the game, and that's what it's all about, right? Having fun, playing the game.
I hear it's about having fun, so I'm giving it a try.
Everything's about having fun. We're playing video games in our free time. If you aren't having fun, what are you doing?
Exactly. Zim, mate, thanks so much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I mean, you guys definitely kind of talked retail up quite a bit. I logged on for maybe about 20 minutes the other day and was immediately overwhelmed. So I'm probably going to give it another crack.
Honestly, I can't stress enough how much I was in your shoes. Like, it was all a bit much, but I just pushed through it, and you pick it up pretty quickly. So yeah, see how you go. I think a lot of people were talking like in the Discord chat going like, oh fuck, you're making me want to play retail. Oh, I might give it a go. Oh, okay, we'll see how we go. So ubiquitous. We might have swung a few people around. Who knows?
I've been playing this whole time.
For
the first time in a long time.
Well, what do you think?
Well, I'm just leveling, but it's fun. I'm level 41 on a shaman. It's cool.
You didn't just go from 1 to 41 during this podcast, did you?
No, this is my remix character that I got to 30 like the first week he came out and never finished up.
Mate, I'll dungeon with you. I'll fucking do it all. Yubi, we've got him. Hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, I don't want to sound like I'm fucking desperately trying to convince people, but it's just the honest truth. Like, I'm fucking playing it and I'm going, this shit's pretty fun. and I'm someone that has played every retail expansion at least for like the first 2 weeks
Yeah.
and stuff like that. And like, I don't know, it's just I'm walking around and I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, this is World of Warcraft instead of, oh, this is retail.
Yeah,
So,
100%. And I'm the same. I'm not trying to convert people, but I'm just telling people it's the most fun I've had with World of Warcraft in a long time. And like you say, it's a meme, but it does feel very World of Warcrafty more than it has in years. Where were we? Fred, thank you so much, mate. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks, man. Really, thanks for having me on.
I loved that you'd done the homework in advance with your dream shaman talent tree. Thank you for that. And Stan, mate, thank you so much. It was great having you here.
Yeah, thanks for talking me into playing some retail.
Oh, God, we got you as well. What did you roll?
I'll probably start up one of my old shamans that I've had since vanilla.
Does everyone on the planet play shaman? What the fuck is going on?
Well, it's the Shaman podcast today, right?
That's true.
Every episode's the shaman episode, exactly. All right, guys, look, I'll love you and leave you there. I'll stick around in voice, but I'll end the stream. Thanks, stream. I will catch you later. Have a good one, everyone.